Thank you again. I would also like to congratulate Councillor Nick Johnson on becoming the new leader of the Liberal Democratic Party in Southwark. Councillor Johnson would like to say a few words. Is he there?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Not only is this my first speech as leader of the Liberal Democrats opposition group, it's also my first formal speech on Zoom. We've all had to adopt to a lack of face-to-face interactions. This makes it all the more frustrating when giving this speech, because I wanted to start by paying tribute to our own much-loved departing leader, Councillor Anid Al-Samarrai. And how can you possibly sum up over a decade of leadership? None of us have gone into politics for the money or the power or the fame. We do it because we want to feel like we made a difference, that our presence meant that the lives of people in Southwark were better than they otherwise would have been. If there is anyone who encapsulates that spirit of public service, it is Anid. As a tireless ward councillor, she has something approaching a cult following in North Bermondsey. You don't get that by playing cheap political tricks. You earn that by being there night and day, year after year for residents, helping them resolve issues which are ruining their lives, standing up for them when they feel no one else will, and giving them a voice when they feel ignored. Speaking honestly, I suspect that Anid is not the Labour administration's favourite opposition councillor. She spent a decade making life difficult for you. She's challenged your decisions. She's pointed out where you've gone wrong. She's got under your skin. And much though many Labour councillors won't want to admit it, that has been good for you. Strong and effective opposition is central to good democracy. Without it, administrations become tone deaf. They decide they know best, and they decide they don't need to listen to residents. As the leader, the new leader of the Liberal Democrat group, I intend to continue in this tradition of holding the administration to account. But first, I wanted to give you a little bit of personal backstory. I was born in Birkenhead in Liverpool. My mum was an immigrant. She came to this country from Ireland, aged 18, to train as a nurse. I suspect Priti Patel's new salary threshold would have stopped her coming. And just think, I wouldn't then be boring you now. I have my own drinks company called Spirit of Bermondsey, and I got into politics because nobody goes to their grave wishing they earned more money. Above all, we want to feel that our lives mattered and that we somehow made a difference, no matter how small. In a post-COVID world where budgets are even tighter and ugly funding choices will have to be made, it seems clear to me that the need for a strong, constructive and resident-focused opposition is vital. And that is what we as Liberal Democrats will be, amplifying the voice of our residents to this administration, making sure that we are truly all in this together. It would be churlish of me in closing to not only pay tribute to Councillor Al-Samarrai, but also to thank Councillor John for his service to this borough. We haven't always agreed with you, Peter, but your commitment to public service has been very clear. And so I would like to invite this Assembly, in a rare moment of cross-party Zoom-fueled unity, to clap, wave your hands, or do whatever feels right on Zoom, to thank both Councillor John and Councillor Al-Samarrai for their years of service to this borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, we'll do that in a minute. Yeah, okay. Councillor Peter John would like. Why has it come? Mine's come up. Is it? Can I say it? Councillor Peter John would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. Can I congratulate Councillor Johnson on his election as leader of Southwark Liberal Democrats. I'm sorry that I won't be doing a long battle with him, Council Assembly tonight and for a few weeks longer, but I know that he's been the choice of his group, and I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job on their behalf. But I do want to pay tribute and thank my old sparring partner, Councillor Anid Al-Samarrai, who, as Councillor Johnson said, has been leader of the Liberal Democrats in Southwark for a decade. And Councillor Johnson was right. At times, Anid has got under the skin of the administration. Not me personally, I would never show that kind of weakness in any way, shape or form. But Anid has done a great job on behalf of her constituents and on behalf of her group. In a way, it was Anid's misfortune to have become leader of the opposition group at the time that the Liberal Democrats became the party of national government. because A, we could throw things back at her and hold her to account for what her government was doing, but also because I think Anoud would have flown even further into the heights of Liberal Democrat politics nationally had the Liberal Democrats not been in government and then taken the dip that they have subsequently. But she has been an incredibly strong voice for Liberal Democrats in local government. I've always admired the way that the Liberal Democrats promote local government and give it an equality of status with national politics, which I think it deserves and which I think my party is coming to eventually at this time. But I want to thank Anoud. I hope we've been kind of political foes and friends over the last decade, and I'm sure we'll carry on being political friends for the years to come. She's been a great servant of the Liberal Democrats and of our borough.
Thank you, Peter. Are we doing the claps? Okay. I have received apologies for absence from councillors Jack Buck, Sirajul Islam, Eleanor Kerslake, and Victoria Elisa. Are there any other apologies for absence or lateness? Sarah King? No?
Not apologies for lateness, but we do have a couple of technical difficulties with a couple of members who are still trying to get on. So I will give apologies for lateness to Councillor Soames, who I know will be joining us as soon as the technology allows.
Okay, and any apologies from the Lib Dems?
No, Madam Mayor.
Right, okay. Please note that as per the programme motion, voting tonight is not agreed by acclaim, but will be done via the yes and no buttons on Zoom. I will ask all councillors in favour to click yes and all councillors against to click no. Any councillor who has not voted in good time, I will ask the clerk to call on them to either click yes or no, or to say their votes aloud. The clerk will then total the votes and then clear them. Then I will ask all councillors abstaining to click yes, and we'll announce the total and whether the vote was passed or failed. On Monday, I met with the group whips via Zoom to consider the format of this evening's meeting. This is set out in the programme motion, which has been tabled this evening. The motion explains how this evening's business will be conducted. The meeting now needs to vote upon the motion. I would like to move to vote on the motion, programme motion, and test this voting system. All councillors in favour of the programme motion, please click yes now. And all councillors against the programme motion, please click no now.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think it's still tallying up. At the moment, I have 49 yeses. I've got 51 at the moment.
Have you voted, Barry? She's counting.
Some more votes are coming in. We've got 59 councillors in the House, so I'll expect 53 yeses unless someone is abstaining.
What do you reckon, Virginia?
I think more councillors are voting as well. I've got 54 at the moment. And I'm just checking who hasn't voted.
Some councillors
Councillor Helen Dennis hasn't voted.
Apologies, sorry.
Okay.
You done it.
I'm just going through the list to see who hasn't voted. I've got 56 votes.
Councillor Eastham and Councillor Fleming.
We can't vote. We said it. I don't think Gavin can vote either.
Okay. Can you confirm verbally your agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Councillor Fleming. Yes, I can also confirm my agreement.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this is Councillor Edwards. I've worked out how to vote now, so yes, I confirm my agreement.
Thank you.
Has everybody voted?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
The program, all councillors abstaining, please click yes now. There isn't any, is there? Chidi's saying, Chidi?
No one has abstained, so that's fine.
The program motion is carried. Please note that as per the program motion, the following community evidence will be received tonight. Community evidence on Southwark Together, council response to COVID-19 pandemic will be received from, excuse me if I say this wrong, Ahaja Tajudeen Salami, Chief Imam of the Old Kent Road Mosque, Felicia Boshinin, Central Southwark Community Hub, Chris Price from Pecan, and Eloise Dickens from Amina Youth. Community evidence on Southwark Stands Together, Southwark's commitment to tackle racial inequalities will be received from Nicholas Okwulu, Ebenezer Mensah, Dr. Victor Alusa, QPM, Aisha Ahmed from Southwark Scholars, and Olia Rahman from Active Communities Network. Can members also note the written representation listed as number 10 in the community evidence report? Members have agreed the programme motion and I shall be moving the meeting on accordingly, and members are asked to keep the agreed timings. Thank you. The clerk will now explain what other papers have been circulated.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The following papers have been circulated for this meeting. The main agenda, which was circulated prior to the meeting, the open supplemental agenda number 1, which contains community evidence requests and amendments. And the following papers have been circulated by email and are available on the council's website as well. Members' questions and responses and the program motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any member who declares a disclosable pecuniary interest in an item will be asked to mute their mic and turn the camera off for that item. When the item has been voted on, they will be welcome to turn the mic and camera back on and return to the meeting. All councillors have been granted a dispensation by the monitoring officer to vote on the members' allowances tax report. Do any members wish to make any declaration of interest? When making your declaration, can you please specify if it is a disclosable pecuniary interest, and please state the nature of the interest? Are there any declarations? Virginia? No?
Yes,
I
Madam
believe
Mayor.
there's one declaration from Councillor Haumbo and also
Right.
from Councillor Whitehead.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like to declare that I have no pecuniary interest with the Active Community Network. I'm one of the trustees. And also I declare that I have no financial involvement with this organization. The founder of this organization is coming to deliver a community interest this evening.
Okay, thanks. And was there another one?
I believe Councillor Whitehead, Madam Mayor.
Yes,
Councillor
Madam Mayor.
Whitehead?
So I'd like to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest with respect to item 3.2, which is the theme motion entitled Southwark Stands Together and the related amendment. My partner is an employee at the Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Foundation Trust.
Okay, thank you. Can we now approve the minutes of the meeting at Council Assembly held on 26 February 2020 as a correct record?
Agreed.
Agreed. Verbally?
Agreed.
Both agreed. Yes.
Agreed.
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 Wow. Is that it? Darren? Right. As part of the
Agreed, Madam Mayor.
Have we all agreed? Okay, thank you. Right. As part of the programme motion, it is agreed that the meeting should finish at 10 p.m. There are no petitions this evening. There are no questions from the public this evening. I shall move on to the next item, which is the theme debate 1, Southwark Together, Council Response to COVID-19 Pandemic. We shall now consider the first community evidence submission on the theme from Alhaj Tajuddin Salami, sorry if I've said that wrong, Chief Imam of the Old Kent Road Mosque. Thank you for attending this evening. You have 3 minutes in which to address the Assembly. If you want to ask a question, the relevant Cabinet member will send you a written response after the meeting. You can start now. I can't see him, Virginia. Is he there? Are you there? Is he there?
Mayor, we're just looking through the participants just to confirm that the Imam is actually in the house. Alhaji Salami, if you are in the meeting, can you indicate? Some people have registered without their actual names, so it might be that you are in the meeting but not registered as your name. If we have no confirmation, then we'll move on to the next speaker.
We're moving on.
We are moving on, Madam Mayor. We can come back to Alhaji Salami if he's in the house.
Right. We shall now consider the second community evidence submission from Felicia Boshari, Central Southwark Community Hub. Do we know if she's there?
I know she is in the meeting. I've seen her, Madam Mayor.
Okay. You can start now, Felicia.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and good evening, our councillors. Thank you all so much for the invitation. Thank you on behalf of the organisation, Central Southwark Community Hub. In response to the Southwark Council's response to the COVID, We believe there was a bit of slowness in starting, but once it started, it was very good. I work across 3 boroughs in London, and I have to say Southwark Council did a very, very good job. I'm very pleased with the fact that they brought together local organisations, not just bringing our local organisations together, but just supporting us through that process. It's not something I'd experienced in the past, but during this COVID, it was really nice to work with local organisations like ourselves. Some we were aware of, some we knew, some we didn't. The council's response in supporting organisation and recognising the need and the type of borough we live in was really rewarding. We received not just general support, but we received financial support. We received support with food. We received support with just how we developed our organisation. When the pandemic came, it was a shock to our systems because we're a small charity seeing 200 clients with food bank support and supporting them to address the underlying problems that they had. We increased in May to 1,035. That was a big jump. We could not have done that without local people. Local people were so paramount in what we were able to do and what we're still continuing to do. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Daisy, who will give us some figures that we have already seen, and so you're aware of what we've been doing. Daisy.
Hi. So I've been collecting some data at the food bank over the pandemic, and I was just going to say some now. So since the beginning of lockdown, we have supported over 600 new households, and of those households, 60% have been from the South American community near Walworth Road, and 31% have been from Black communities, particularly West African families in Southwark. Of all the new clients that we've been looking after, we have an estimated 50 plus of those who are no recourse to public funds, and predominantly those are South American families. This hasn't been our only focus though. In the pandemic, we have been supporting many other vulnerable groups, such as Southwark pensioners through Southwark Pensioners Centre in Southwark, and those shielding or awaiting their universal credit. So we used to look after about 30 to 50 clients a week with food, but now that's increased fivefold, and we look after an average of 188 households a week. In March, we saw 72 households, April 566, May 1,035, and in June 966.
I'm sorry, your time is up, I'm afraid. So could you sum up? Sorry, it's only
yeah, I'll
3
just
minutes.
pass back to Felicia.
Okay.
I'd like to sum up by reading a case study. This pandemic did not choose color, tribe, status, or race. It hit everyone so hard as I never thought I would step into a food bank in my life until I lost my job and decided to apply for universal credit, which was not forthcoming because the process was hard for everyone. I never thought I'd be going into a food bank until I thought hard about coming to the food bank. When I came to the food bank, the people there were very nice. I came with an empty suitcase. I left with a suitcase full of fresh fruits, all supplies that I needed for the week. Knowing that I can get food there, I hope that I'll not die of hunger till my next universal credit arrived. Thank you for coming out to support families in need in this period. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. Right, so we will now consider the third community evidence from Chris Price at Pecan.
Hello there, thank you for the opportunity of speaking. What have we done since late March? Well, Pecan runs a number of different services across the borough. Our women's service, our employment team and our bank team moved to providing a telephone service. Their main focus was to make wellbeing calls, and over 400 people have been contacted on a regular basis by the teams. We have also posted around 6 rounds of wellbeing packs to members as well, including, a variety of activities to do as well as signposting activity. After a few weeks, we were able to start up some online provision with members coming together and actually being able to interact with each other. Although we recognise that a lot of them do not have good access to the internet. Southwark Food Bank and Peckham Pantry have given us a different set of challenges. With the pantry, we decided that for a couple of months to do bi-weekly deliveries to 100 households that had used the pantry in recent times. 3 weeks ago, we reopened with social distancing measures in place at St Luke's in Peckham. And we have seen around 60 households coming in each week. Sadly, we've not been able to offer the community cafe element that harbours social cohesion. Hopefully, that can return soon. It is in Southwark Food Bank that we have seen the most dramatic changes. In late March, we moved to a delivery-only service with the exception of our wonderful team of volunteers at City Hope, who stayed open on Wednesday afternoons. In the last financial year, up to the end of March, Southwark Food Bank fed 6,500 people, our busiest year to date. In the first quarter of this year, we have already exceeded that total. We have seen a significant increase in families being referred to us over this time. The response from the public has been amazing, with donations of time, food, and money. But what has worked well has been the partnership working in the new community hubs between the voluntary sector, the council, and health. This has been possibly the most dynamic cross-sector partnership I've been involved in. And I've worked in Southwark and across Southeast London in the voluntary sector for over 25 years. As we go forward, this style of partnership is crucial to achieve positive results. As we look to develop services that meet the new landscape, let us focus on addressing poverty and not the lack of food, because there's plenty of food around. There is not enough money in the right pockets. Let us together focus on the upstream causes of poverty, as addressing the issue of food alone is only addressing the symptoms and not the causes. With the voluntary sector playing a key community-based role, we can bring cost value as well as social capital to an ongoing partnership with the council that focuses on achieving our shared hopes of a flourishing Southwark. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And now we have Eloise Dickens from Amina Youth. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening, councillors. My name is Eloise Dickens. I'm the founder and CEO of Anima Youth, a youth organisation, a non-charitable organisation working with children and young people from disadvantaged backgrounds through youth-led projects with the aim of supporting them to transition independently into adult life. So we were originally funded by the Southwark Positive Futures Fund, and it was our Being Her Girls Early Intervention Exploitation Project, which was supposed to commence in April term. However, due to the COVID, we weren't able to do that because of school closures. However, the Positive Futures Virtual Pathways Fund has enabled us to get the resources we desperately needed to take our project online. As a result, we've gone from planning to support 20 young people during the April term to supporting and engaging with over 300 new young women living in Southwark since the beginning of lockdown. 82% of these young women have identified as Black, African or Caribbean. 10 young women have since actively worked with us to create videos of themselves sharing tips with other young people on how they've been coping with the lockdown. And as a result of this fund, we have also been able to work closely with a particular young woman to share their story with the BBC, which we're currently still working on. And thank you. I would like to now pass it on to George, who is also a recipient of the Positive Futures Fund.
Thank you, Eloise. So as part of the Positive Futures Fund, Motives were responsible for running a program called Making the Transition, where we were helping 30 high-risk Year 9 and 10 students through 3 schools, namely Bacon's College, Sills 4, and Globe Academy. When March hit and Corona came, we decided to shift everything to a digital format, and that allowed us to do 4 main things. So one of the things we used our app, which is on iOS, to promote virtual events for young people, around 15 every single week, so they could actually still access positive things to do over the summer. We ran 3 webinars, which over 60 people were supported at each of them. We also set up a coaching program matching young people and relatable young professionals to give back from organizations such as Google, Rolls-Royce, and 10 young people have gone through that so far. And with the Virtual Pathways program, we're currently running a new one, which is launching actually this Monday. And we've actually signed up 117 young people in 10 days to help them do 2 things, either build their professional skills or develop a side hustle, and giving them something to do over the next 6 weeks to stay productive. And one of the testimonials that we were able to get from one of our programs so far, I'll just give you in a short snippet, is not gonna lie, I think this changed my direction I had in life. Please keep it up. All I needed was a group of supporters and a little push to take action. So we just want to thank Councillor Cotto and everyone that made this possible. And I'll pass it back over to Eloise to ask any questions.
Thank you, George. I have a question to Councillor Evelyn Okoto, and the question is, though we have been successful in reaching young people during the pandemic, initially engaging with them via social media, in comparison to face-to-face, it is more difficult and requires high levels of consistency and resources. The fund has been great and a breakthrough. However, it only covers a period of 16 weeks. Prior to COVID, our work has supported young people in PRUs, schools, and local community hubs. Understandably, it will be difficult for us to get back to normal. The question is, are there any plans to extend this fund or plans for additional similar funds to provide virtual or online support whilst we navigate through post-COVID-19 challenges when the time comes? Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Eloise. Evelyn will give you a written reply. Okay. Thank you. And I think now the Imam has turned up. Is he here? Chidi? Has the Imam turned up?
I understand the Imam is now here.
Okay. So would you like to give your 3 minutes community evidence, please? Is he there? Where? Is he there?
It looks like he's having login problems. I've just had a private message.
Okay.
He says he should be logged in a minute. He is here. Councillor Alhaji Salami, can you hear us? Alhaji Salami? Alhaji Salami, can you respond if you can hear us? If not, we'll have to move on to the next speakers or the next debate.
No.
I think we might have to move on, Madam Mayor.
Is he still trying to log on then? Or? Okay. Is he there, Chidi?
He is here, but he's not responding, so I think we'll need to move on.
Okay, we're going to move on then. We will now consider, I would like to thank you all for attending this evening. Please stay with us if you wish to listen to the theme debate. Is that him?
Alhaji Salam, is that you?
No. We will now We will now consider the themed motion on Southwark Together, Council response to COVID-19 pandemic. Councillor Peter John, Leader of the Council, you have 7 minutes in which to present the themed debate and the motion on the theme.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's my honour to present this motion. Unprecedented is a word that has been used extremely often in the last 4 months about the crisis that we have faced, but it truly has been unprecedented. No plan could have ever been written that would have foreseen some of what we'd have had to have dealt with and seen as a community in the last 4 months. I want to thank Felicia, Daisy, Chris, Eloise and George and Imam for their evidence and for the work that they have done. Within our council, I want to thank every single member of our staff, from our Chief Executive, Eleanor Kelly, down. Everyone has played their part since this crisis began, and they continue to play their part. I want to thank all of the councillors present and not present this evening who have done so much to show leadership in their communities at this time. To my cabinet colleagues for stepping up, having to respond in unprecedented ways to an unprecedented crisis. We started our meeting this evening, Madam Mayor, by recalling the 250 or more from our borough who have died as a result of COVID-19. We remember also the many thousands who have been affected by this illness, affected by loss. It is truly the case, as we thank every public servant in our borough and every community group that has been involved in the response to this crisis, it's right that we recognise the catastrophic nature of it, in terms of death and illness, the catastrophic nature in terms of the harm it's done to our individual and collective economic well-being, the harm it's done to our young people who've had education brought to an end prematurely, who have missed months away from school, who may never catch up on that time missed. And it's catastrophic because of the changes that it's forced on all of us, how we lead our everyday lives, how we travel, how we work, how we meet, and how we spend our leisure time. An unprecedented crisis required an unprecedented response, and I'm so proud of the work that our council staff have done. Some worked immediately on the front line as part of our community hub operation, 239 plus members of staff redeployed to do that. 3,000 of our staff had to change the way they worked because they were working from home. But our strength has been shown once again to be our people in Southwark, not just the people of our borough, but our staff who have worked so hard. One of the great sadnesses of this crisis has been the disproportionate impact which it has had on our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. And they will be at the heart of our response to this crisis. We know and we recognise that some people's trust and confidence in our health service has been shaken. Some people's trust and confidence in public service has been shaken over this difficult period. I'm pleased in Southwark that we recognised early on that this was going to be an issue, that we were going to have to work as hard bringing our community together and supporting our community at the end of this crisis as we did during this crisis, providing basic services and support to our residents. The work now turns to renewal and recovery. I will play a part in that at the Transition Board for London and the Recovery Board for London. But the challenges in our borough are clear and immediate. Not just supporting our community, the potential mental health challenge that many people might face coming out of this, the financial challenge that we now face collectively and again individually, the financial challenge we face as a council, with budget savings at this present time estimated to be the largest that we will ever have had to find since 2010. It really is a time for the government to step forward and ensure that we have the finances we need to support our residents coming out of this crisis as we did during this crisis. We face the challenge of managing a potential second wave. We have our local outbreak management plan in place, and I'm confident that it is robust. And we have that challenge to rebuild our businesses and our schools, helping our children bridge that attainment gap that might have arisen. Madam Mayor, Southwark is slowly reopening. Our borough remains vibrant and diverse, and we are proud of who and where we are. Our efforts as we go forward will be focused on ensuring that those who have been most harshly impacted by COVID-19 are helped back into work, into school, and into their new normal lives. Madam Mayor, we will renew and rebuild our communities and our economy. We will do that because of who we are. We will renew and rebuild a Southwark which is greener, which is safer, which is healthier, and in spite of all that we have seen, a Southwark which is better. Madam Mayor, I move this motion.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Councillor John. The lead opposition spokesperson will now have an opportunity to reply to Councillor John's statement and speak to the motion. Oh, no, this is wrong. No, who's going to speak now? Just put Nick Johnson. Councillor Nick Johnson will reply. Are you there?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor John. Everybody seems to think we're out of the woods. Shops have reopened, pubs have reopened, McDonald's has reopened. But we're not out of the woods, are we? As the lockdown in Leicester demonstrates, we're very far from being out of the woods. Even if there is no second spike in infections, even if there is no surge in deaths this winter, even if this is the last we ever see of COVID or any other coronavirus, we'll be left with a gaping hole in our borough. People's lives have been cut short. People's jobs have gone, sometimes for good. Domestic abuse has surged. Loneliness and isolation have become the norm for many elderly or vulnerable residents. If you're Black, Asian, or minority ethnic background, it means you're more than twice as likely to have died during this pandemic. And the council is faced with a massive and unfunded revenue shortfall running into tens of millions of pounds. Yet there are some signs of hope and positivity to take from all of this. We are, for the first time ever, able to house all those sleeping rough. Honestly, I ask all of you today, who ever thought that this would ever happen in our lifetimes? And I think we should all give thanks to Ian Swift, his team, and all others. The council has proved itself to be nimble and responsive, stepping into the gap where the Tory government has failed. And with pavements widened and cycle use soaring, we are becoming a greener and healthier borough. And thanks to the hard work and selflessness of the NHS, council workers, councillors, mutual aid groups, community organisations, businesses and volunteers, Southwark has demonstrated a unity of spirit and a common sense of purpose that we probably haven't seen in decades. How do we capitalise on this? How do we best move forward from this? What an opportunity to make Southwark a beacon of excellence, not only for London, but across the entire country. Well, perhaps this is the opportunity we have been waiting for to make those far-reaching changes we all know we have to make, but somehow lack the will or the strength to actually make happen. Perhaps this is our once-in-a-generation opportunity to build on the improvement in air quality and other environmental improvements experienced during lockdown and to implement a true green agenda. We should adopt what's called the Rethinking Locally framework of the Local Government Association. They propose establishing a diverse cross-party working group of councillors, council officers, public health experts, businesses, community representatives, with a scope to define the key actions and investment needed to create the future Southwark. The scope should include things like planning, housing, adults and children's social care, education, health, environment, transport, the local economy, including retail and high streets. We also propose that the administration, and this is a bold step, backs this initiative with a seed fund of £30 million from reserves and the strategic proportion of the borough-wide community infrastructure levy. It's a lot of money in tight times, but it will be used to commence the initial stages of what can potentially be comprehensive and truly long-lasting initiatives within the next 2 years. Now, of course, none of us truly knows what will happen next. We need to be braced for further COVID outbreaks, and with a massive funding shortfall, we need to accept that the services the council provides are going to have to change. Yet for this to work, the council needs to bring the community on the journey. For community to cohesion to remain, this administration will need to commit genuinely to listening to the views of local residents, and not only listening to, but also being willing to act on those views. It's for these reasons that I ask all councillors to vote for the amendments to the motion on tonight's council's response to COVID-19. If ever there was a time when Southwark's motto was relevant, it is now. Let us all be proud that we are united to serve. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. As part of the programme motion, the meeting has agreed to have a combined debate on the motion and the amendment. I have a list of members who have indicated they would like to speak. I would like to call them in order. Each councillor has 3 minutes, and I'm warning you that you'll be muted as soon as it's 3 minutes, okay? So the first speaker we have is Councillor Kieran Williams. Kieran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want, like others, to start by putting on record my thanks for all who've helped in this response to this once in a lifetime in generations event that we've all been through. In my own area of the council, under my own portfolio alone, we've seen our staff set up 4,000 members of staff to work at home, provide 2,000 welfare calls to people older and more vulnerable to check that they have the support they need and put it in place where it's needed, deliver 13,000 emergency food parcels, and ensure that no one is in our streets, housing 350 people who would otherwise have slept rough. But there has been so much more across the whole council. It has been an amazing response. I've had the opportunity to speak to so many members of our local NHS, nurses, doctors, as well as those in care homes, and to hear just the incredible work they have done for the people of our borough, and I want to thank them too. And I want to thank the community organisations that have stepped up. We've heard from PCAN and Central Southwark Community Hub and others today. There has been an amazing response across Southwark. I would like to list them all: Pembroke House, Time and Talents, all Brighton, but the list is so long. It has been an incredible joint effort. As others have said, we've faced an absolutely unprecedented challenge, and together we have met it with an unprecedented response. But whilst our response has shown the best of us, the pandemic has also shown a fairly unforgiving light on the state of our country. It's highlighted the poverty, the inequality, and the racism that we face in Britain today. If you have a big house with a large garden, a good job, and savings in your bank, then lockdown may feel like a time you'll look back on with fond memories. But if you're living in an overcrowded home, we're on a 0 hours contract, were earning just enough to get by, this pandemic will have felt like, and I know it has for many, many people I've spoken to, an unbearable stress and a tipping point into poverty. And we know that those from the Black and Asian and ethnic minority communities have faced on top of that and all the discrimination that they've had in their lives, the reality that they have been much more likely to lose loved ones. In responding to all of that, we need to move forward, and I move forward with absolute optimism, not optimism because of COVID or because of the support we might get from government, but because of the scale of community response we have seen in our borough. That's why I've set up a review to work with all of the organisations involved in our community hub to build on the amazing work that's happened through that, not to provide food forever, but to provide support for our communities to lift people out of poverty. It's a mission baked into our council. It's a mission to end inequality in our borough, to make sure prosperity is shared, that is part of who we are as a Labour-run council.
Thank you, Kieran. Now we have Councillor Lorraine Lauder with a tribute to her mother who died of COVID. Lorraine, Councillor Lauder.
As many of you know, my mum passed away recently from coronavirus. I want to say a very big thank you for the beautiful flowers that you sent to me during this very difficult time, and for all your kind cards, phone calls, and your support really means a lot to me. My mum really did suffer. She was admitted to St Thomas's Hospital and put into a COVID isolation ward, where she was for 4 weeks and 1 day. Mum just gave up. She refused to eat and drink. She pulled all her drips out. The doctors phoned me twice a day. They set up an app on my phone called A Touch Away to see if I could encourage her to eat and drink. But I'm sad to say it didn't. I have to say that you couldn't fault St Thomas's Hospital, the staff are a caring team, and yes, they care. Mum was put into a side room overlooking the Thames and the House of Commons. I was allowed to visit my mum, to visit her during the last couple of weeks. I had to wear a plastic visor, a mask, gloves, and a plastic gown. When I went into Mum's room, I said to Mum, I'm the Cyberwoman from Doctor Who. I really did try to encourage her to drink, but she wouldn't have any of it. She just wanted to hold my hand. The doctors and nurses and palliative care staff all really did care for my mum and many others. They put their own health at risk to do so. We should all be proud of our National Health Service. Stay safe and keep well. Thank you. Mute.
Thank you. Now we have Councillor David Noakes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and my sincere condolences to you, Lorraine, and your family. I would like to begin by saying thank you to the people of Southwark for their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. To the NHS staff who have again demonstrated the true value of the NHS by putting their lives on the line day in, day out to save and care for every patient. To our care workers who have gone into work to support some of the most vulnerable in our communities, despite not being given the priority and equipment they needed to support those they care for and themselves. To our council workers and our other public sector workers who have been on the front line of providing and maintaining vital public services. To our voluntary sector and charities who have redoubled their efforts to support the most vulnerable in our communities. And last but not least, to the tens of thousands of residents who have become active in their communities through mutual aid groups, supporting their neighbours, or through helping us to flatten the curve of transmissions in Southwark. Thank you. To acknowledge this response, we have suggested recognising those partners and individuals who have made a significant difference by rewarding them with the freedom of the borough in our amendment. In Southwark, like elsewhere in the country and across the globe, COVID-19 has exacted a heavy toll with over 1,400 positive tests and 249 deaths, including 60 deaths in our care homes. Many more, of course, have been infected but have not been diagnosed. COVID-19 has exposed in a dramatic way what many of us already knew, that inequality kills. Whether it's health inequality, economic inequality, inequality of opportunity, or discrimination, there is a heavy personal and financial price for both individuals and our society, a cost that none of us can afford to pay. Inequality matters, and it's why Black Lives Matter. The purpose of our amendment is to acknowledge the response of the diverse communities of Southwark and our public, voluntary, charity and private partners, and say that this is a time to recognise the new normal and redouble our efforts to build a better future that works for all. That is why we are asking the Council to adopt the LGA's Rethinking Locally initiative, to not just respond to the crisis caused by the pandemic, but to take the lead in rebuilding our communities and the way we live our lives. This means rethinking and diversifying the way we pay and deliver social care, building on and developing an equal relationship between councils and the NHS, properly funding public health and delivering on the prevention agenda, ensuring that local support is targeted to changing the lives of vulnerable people, prioritising delivering on climate change and air quality, and redoubling our efforts to dismantle and challenge discrimination. We know that none of these tasks are easy, and also that they cannot be delivered on good intentions alone, and that is why we've suggested a figure of 30 million. Finally, as well as holding the government to account, particularly in regards to appropriate financial support, we should also reflect on our own local response through a period of consultation and engagement with our partners and communities, and by using scrutiny to learn lessons and make recommendations. I ask all councillors to support our amendment.
3 minutes with Stephanie. Thank you, David. Now we have Councillor Stephanie Cryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Many of us lost a family member, friend or neighbour to COVID. This virus has affected all of us and those we serve, and we are still very much in the midst of the pandemic. We're seeing the gaping health inequalities amongst our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities as the virus has taken hold. And we've seen the other impacts on some of our poorest communities, an increased demand on food banks, lack of accessibility to digital solutions for homeschooling, and increasing unemployment as firms struggle to keep afloat. But we've seen the best of our communities during this pandemic, coming together to form mutual aid groups, TRAs providing food boxes and hot meals for vulnerable residents, and a general desire to help and support those most greatly affected over the past few months. It's been humbling to see the difference they make and the goodwill and generosity of so many residents. And I also want to add my thanks to our council staff, the NHS workers and our community sectors. I've been contacted by businesses across Southwark who've been in desperate need of financial support. Whilst the government grants have been welcome, there are still too many who do not meet the criteria. We needed to respond to this and to fill the gaps where possible. And I'm proud that we were the first council to launch a hardship fund to provide that support to many more businesses who slipped through the net, businesses who will be key to our economic recovery and renewal. We are standing on the precipice of a deep-rooted and long-lasting recession, one that will reduce the life chances of young people leaving school and university, one where we will see job losses and mass unemployment under a government who care only about big industry and profits, one which will be further exacerbated by Brexit, as the government's determination of Brexit at all costs will further damage an already fragile economy. We know that some sectors, such as hospitality, will continue to be adversely impacted by COVID, and we'll be renewing our skills strategy to ensure that we identify the training and support needed in the workforce for both job creation and in-work progression. But we have to be realistic and face the facts that there will be less opportunity for apprenticeships and that no one is immune from redundancy unemployment. Therefore, we need to look at an economic renewal for Southwark that puts our residents and our communities at its heart, where jobs are created by local businesses for local residents and where community wealth building takes centre stage. A renewal that chimes with our ambitions to tackle the climate emergency, bringing forward a Green New Deal and creating the opportunities for jobs and apprenticeships in green and sustainable industries. We need to continue to be ambitious for Southwark, to take bold and radical decisions, We need Southwark to be a place where businesses want to invest, but that investment has to be for the benefit of our residents and our communities. The future for Southwark's economic renewal has to put people at its heart. We need to work collaboratively with our communities, the VCS and businesses to deliver a truly transformative vision for Southwark. Whilst our hapless government looks to its own interests and continues to lurch from one ill-thought policy to another, this Labour administration will, as it's always done, stand together with our residents and deliver for renewal for this and future generations.
Thank you, Councillor Cryan. We now have Councillor Catherine Rose.
Madam Mayor, it is hard to imagine the final moments of Donnell Rule, the young man killed on the Kingswood Estates exactly a week ago. But if life does flash in front of you at moments of peril, then Donnell, aged only 18, would have simply witnessed his childhood. The resources available to protect and assist children of his age were eroded and cut through austerity and other political choices since 2010. COVID-19 and the community response has laid bare the huge disparities in the lives and experiences of children in our borough. Tectonic plates of inequality and exclusion that too many of our children and their families face. It has also made us recognise the vital importance of our physical infrastructure, our air quality, our roads, our streets, our infrastructure, access to public parks, the privilege of a private garden, and the acute need for children to have access to our public realm if they don't. But it was also in the public realm that Donnell Rule was murdered. It is in the public realm that too many vulnerable children, often also hungry, are picked off and exposed to criminal networks, abuse and neglect. It is in the public realm that children are killed or injured in road traffic accidents. It is in the public realm that children suffer debilitating levels of air pollution, sometimes to life-limiting effect. It is in the public realm that much of our childhood is spent for good or bad, and yet as a society we continually fail to consider the rights or meet the explicit needs of children in the public realm, which is a tragedy because we were all children once. Madam Mayor, We Were Built for This is the name of an excellent report published on Monday by Locality. Locality is a national membership body for local community organisations across England. The report captures contributions, experiences and reflections from over 100 organisations, many echoing the comments tonight. I recommend it to you all. It makes insightful recommendations to government and local authorities about which aspects of the community response to COVID-19 need to be preserved, fully funded and supported. The recommendation that also caught my attention is its call for the creation of a community right to own and not just bid for assets of community value. It might assist us to create within Southwark a 21st century equivalent of Aldo van Eyck's post-war play spaces that transform the lives of children and communities in Amsterdam, or allow us to identify and deliver our own 15-minute neighbourhoods that the Mayor of Paris is now advocating to make it a truly green and sustainable city. The only meaningful way that we can build that better is to start at the very beginning and be equally bold. We need to strengthen and embed children's rights across all that we do. We must finally put children at the apex of our pyramid of priorities for the environment and infrastructure. As Professor Tim Gill so eloquently says, children are society's indicator species. A salmon will also return to a clean river. This is true in regards to our public realm. If children can play and thrive in our public realm, then it works better for everyone else, everywhere, for good. So post-COVID, if we are truly to build back better, we must first pick up the broken pieces of childhood and fix it.
Thank you, Councillor Catherine Rose. We now come on to Councillor Victor Chamberlain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to pay my respects to all the Southwark residents, including the council staff that have lost their lives to COVID-19. Their contribution to our borough will not be forgotten. I would also like to pay tribute to all of Southwark's key workers, including our staff, who have made truly Herculean efforts to support our neighbours and friends through this awful period, and they have saved lives. I hope that one of the few positive outcomes from this horrific episode is that government will show that it truly values our key workers in the future. Whether that is ensuring that they are paid a fair wage, or that they are given access to genuinely good quality and affordable housing, or even just that they are seen and valued. Now, as an opposition backbench councillor, I was impressed by the council's response to coronavirus. The council acted swiftly, diligently, and showed that it is willing and able to adapt to the circumstances. There were still black holes, but the nature of what we faced was unprecedented. That's why I was working alongside my Liberal Democrat colleagues, drafted a letter that was sent to the Chief Executive and leader in April, outlining 30 recommendations for how we can help Southwark residents and businesses through the lockdown. Our letter thanks staff, but also set out some practical and constructive recommendations for what more needed to be done. We proposed, for example, to extend the council tax reduction scheme, to have a dedicated campaign around mental health, and to help with sustainable transport and social distancing. But most importantly, the letter that we drafted offered to work cooperatively with the administration in a cross-party working group so that we can all focus on Southwark's long-term recovery. I'm really pleased that in the 3 months since then, the OSC committee has endorsed and included a number of those recommendations in its report, its recommendations to Cabinet, and that some of them are now being enacted. But as we come out of lockdown and begin our long-term recovery, we must seek to lock in some of those opportunities that have been presented to us. The council did a really amazing job in making sure that all those that sleep rough in the borough were given a temporary home. But we must now ensure that no one is ever forced to sleep rough again in our borough. This is a golden opportunity. Let's not waste it. Now, we've seen new leaders elected during the lockdown, not just on the Liberal Democrat benches in Southwark, but also on the official opposition benches in Parliament. Keir Starmer has made a powerful start and shown that actually it's the government and opposition that must work cooperatively to come through the next few challenging years. We in Southwark must now do the same and adopt that approach to build an even stronger borough. Our recovery will be difficult, and it will require all of us to come together and contribute. Never before has our borough's motto been so relevant. We must be united to serve. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Victor. That was perfect timing, I have to say. Now we have Councillor Vicky Mills.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, what could be a more devastating impact of COVID than this government's response to the kind of amazing effort of councils across the country to leave us totally underfunded as a result of COVID. And in those really precarious financial circumstances, we can't possibly have £30 million somehow lying around. I would love to spend 30 million, I absolutely would. But at the moment, we're looking at a predicted budget shortfall for 21-22 of maybe £50 million. We have £21 million worth of unallocated reserves in Southwark. They could be gone by this time next year. We're likely to not collect £10 million of council tax this year. £20 million worth of council rent could go uncollected. And behind every unpaid bill, there is a resident who is sinking, who is not making ends meet. And for every one of those, perhaps there are 4 or 5 who are scrimping and saving to pay their bills. And I do not see how in those circumstances our response to residents can be to say we are going to spend millions of pounds on some kind of doubling of bureaucracy. We cannot spend £30 million on committees and meetings and talking when there are kids in Southwark going hungry. And I think for me, the challenge tonight was really laid down by Chris from PCAN. This is not necessarily about an emergency response, about putting out food parcels. This is about our opportunity to finally tackle the old inequalities, the old injustices, the old racism, all these things that have always been there, but have been even more exposed by COVID. The difference between having a home and living in overcrowded accommodation. The difference between those kids who'll ride out 6 months out of school and go back to a great school in September versus those kids who have a million disadvantages and will probably be going back to a failing school with hundreds of others in September. You know, it's time to kind of like tackle head on. And if we have £30 million to spend, which I'm not sure we do, let's spend it on tackling on tackling head on the huge recession that is waiting for us. Let's make sure that we are growing jobs. Let's make sure that we are creating employment support. Let's make sure that we have well-funded schools that are going to make sure that our kids can close that attainment gap that's been created. But let's really not spend that money on talking amongst ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Now we have Councillor James McCash.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think this has been a positive debate and it's given us plenty of opportunity for reflection over the past few months, and reflection primarily on the tragedy that has been the tragic loss of life, the tragic loss of jobs, the tragic loss of that sort of that sense of normality, that sort of feeling that you know what's happening in the world around you. But while this darkness has befallen us, at the same time, there have been these glimmers of hope. Hope for a different way of doing things, hope for the opportunity to build a better society, and build a better society based on the values of collectivism, of mutual aid and mutual respect. And I think we've seen that in three places. We've seen it in the council, we've seen it in the unions, we've seen it in the community. I mean, first in the council, I think we've spoken about this at length. 300 rough sleepers housed, millions of pounds of emergency support given out, 13,000 food parcels delivered to those who need it most. For anyone who was not already convinced of the need of a progressive Labour council, they are surely convinced now. But at the same time, we've seen an admirable response from the trade unions. The government has frankly put lots of workers at great risk during this crisis, and the unions have responded admirably. In Unite, workers have organised to ensure that bus drivers have adequate protection. In Unison, workers have organised to ensure that care workers have adequate protection. And in my own union, the National Education Union, teachers, support staff and parents have come together to push back against the government's reckless plans and make schools more safe when they do open to all children as they so need to. And then thirdly, there's the community response. Because when coronavirus was very clear to all of us, but before the government had acted, mutual aid groups sprung up across the country, offering support in a range of ways. In my own ward in Goose Green, the Goose Green mutual aid group has delivered food, collected prescriptions, even walked neighbours' dogs. And they've done that all voluntarily, and all on the principle not of charity, but of solidarity. And I think there's a single thread that runs through all of this. When the government let us down, councils step in. When the government let us down, unions stepped in. And when the government let us down, the community stepped in. And I think it's worth reflecting on how it is that the government has let us down in these areas. And frankly, it's no surprise, because conservatism, the ideology that there is no society, cannot respond when a deadly virus needs a response from society as a whole. Rugged individualism is no defence against COVID-19. So despite everything, I'm very optimistic. Across Southwark, thousands of people have acted selflessly and acted in the interest of the collective. And this pattern has been played out across the whole country. So I'm optimistic, not because these people are special, these people are unique, but quite the opposite. Sorry,
James, you've got to sum up now. You've done your 3 minutes.
I'm summing up right now as we speak.
Yes.
I'm optimistic, sorry, because these are just ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I think that gives us a lot of faith and a lot of hope for the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and apologies for going over.
Thank you, James. A very impassioned statement there. So the next person is Councillor Anoud Al-Samarai.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and a huge thank you to the constitutional team for managing this evening so well. Really impressed so far, touch wood, with how smoothly it's gone. And I also hadn't expected the backbenches to be as comfortable as my living room sofa. So extra thanks for making it happen virtually. Huge thank you for the very kind comments from Nick and Peter earlier. But just to be really clear, I've got no intention whatsoever of stopping holding this administration to account. So please don't get the wrong impression. And in fact, having just heard Councillor Mills' comments about our amendment where it is being completely intentionally misrepresented. We are not proposing spending £30 million on committees. It's about spending £30 million on actually proactively building back and investing in the challenges that COVID has shown we need to. Actually making sure that the people who have been housed continue to be housed. The wording of our amendment talks about inequality and poverty and also climate change. And the other bit of our amendment that's absolutely key is, you know, we've shown how the council can respond to an emergency. Now, what we need to do is respond to the climate change emergency, which we all said we wanted to do a year ago. I want to add my thanks to the staff of the council, from Eleanor right the way through to every single person who's dealt with the challenges of working from home or being on the front line. I want to thank the charities, some of which we've heard from this evening, and the hundreds of other charities and community groups we have in this borough who have really stepped up. But the thing I particularly wanted to mention tonight was around mutual aid groups. The speed with which they organised, the technology that they've used, just been incredible. I've had a real privileged position, actually. I've been, partly because I was stuck at home with a 2-year-old, it took a lot of the calls for both North Bermondsey, the ward I represent, and South Bermondsey, the ward I live in. And it was a wonderful, and still is ongoing, way of kind of seeing the people in very, you know, needy situations, very keen for help, and people so quickly there to help them. And a lady called Kim, who, as part of her helping with shopping with people, would always bring them a bunch of flowers. A lady who worked at Evelina Children's Hospital, whose little boy was high risk, so she was trying to keep him in separate rooms. And Claire, one of our volunteers, turned up with tons of sort of antibacterial stuff that she'd had to source from miles away. A lady called Emma, who managed to help a 101-year-old living on the Rennie estate celebrate his birthday. North Bermondsey have done quizzes to support local businesses and set up a website. And just last week, a pensioner who's finally able to go out said, could somebody just wheelchair me round Southwark Park? And now that's happening every week with a volunteer. So some brilliant stuff. And I just think we should celebrate that. We should support it. There were, to be honest, some Labour councillors who tried to be a little bit controlling of our mutual aid group. And I think they gradually realised, actually, you need to trust communities and residents to make their own decisions. Peter talked earlier about the Lib Dems' belief in the strength of local government. That's absolutely true. But what we really believe in is that power shouldn't lie with the state. It shouldn't lie with business and the market. It should lie with the individuals and communities who know best how to make their own decisions. If mutual aid groups haven't demonstrated how absolutely that is the right way of organising ourselves, then I don't know what will. So I hope we will thank mutual aid groups properly. Our amendment asks us to thank key workers by offering them the freedom of the borough as well. So I think that we really need a recognition role, but more than that, we need to say how we can support and celebrate and keep these groups going in future. So I really hope we can all get behind that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Anoud. And finally, we have Councillor Jasmine Ali.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to reflect our thanks to the services that have kept on going for the people who need them the most. Throughout the height of this pandemic, schools were the 4th emergency service, the vulnerable and key worker children, the majority of schools were open. Our child protection services open, our youth offending service open, our adult safeguarding service open. I know that you will join me in commending every care home and every care worker for the amazing work that they do to support our older people. We salute all our care workers, unlike this backstabbing Prime Minister who tried to blame them for the COVID fatalities. We wrote to government to remind them that they promised to protect our vulnerable people. We asked Matt Hancock to give us the means to do this. We urge government to get testing in all our care homes. As well as the front line, we should recognise our commissioning team who work day and night to get the PPE to every care home in Southwark. Okay, thanks to our social workers, who hand-delivered 1,000 laptops to children in our care, and thanks to those who launched our young persons free mental health online service. There is more work to do as infections fall. We will not fritter away our chance to prepare for a threatening resurgence in the winter months, and there is more work to do. We know that people from BAME backgrounds are actually, some reports say, up to 4 times more likely to die of COVID-19 infection. Kevin Fenton's public health inquiry into BAME deaths looked at the disproportionate deaths, and he told us that racism and discrimination suffered by Britain's Black, Asian and minority ethnic people is responsible. What does this mean? In short, it means if you're BAME, you're more likely to be poor, you're more likely to work in crowded spaces, more likely to be living in crowded spaces, you are more likely to be excluded from school, more likely to be stopped and searched by the police, spend time in the care system, and more likely to die of COVID-19. So it's no surprise that the Black Lives Matters movement has so powerfully resonated in our borough. The movement is driven by tragedy, but we also know it is driven by hope too. Hope in the way that all its demands are being taken up by millions globally, and in Southwark we'll support Councillor City to make sure Southwark Together works with this movement to root out systemic racism wherever we find it, in our schools, in our workplaces, in our housing and policing, because our lives depend on it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Jasmine. Another passionate plea from a Southwark councillor. I love all the Southwark councillors. So, thank you. We've now reached the end of that session. So I shall ask Councillor John to respond to the debate. You have 3 minutes in which to respond, Councillor John.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor, and thank you to everyone who's participated in that debate, and for some incredibly moving personal testimony, particularly Councillor Lauder. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Lorraine. But other very moving points, Catherine Rose talking about the murder on the Kingswood estate only last week, truly heartbreaking for Danelle's family and friends. 2 issues really struck me as coming out of that. First of all, our appreciation, massive appreciation, 3 things: massive appreciation for community and all that it has done, and that will continue to be the case, I have no doubt. Secondly, I think the concern that we have with regard to our residents' mental health, both young and old, and the work that we're doing to tackle that. And I should acknowledge the work that's already been done by Norman Lamb as the new chair of South London and Maudsley, who called together a summit at the end of June for people across the 4 boroughs that SLAM serves, getting not just the hospital and professional staff, but community groups ready to support each other and our communities as we go forward. And it's really good to see such an activist chair in place there. And I think as we've prioritised it as a council plan issue, particularly for young people, it's something that we really will be called upon to deliver going forward. And there was clearly an issue about the £30 million within the Liberal Democrat amendment, and it's good to see, Anoud, you haven't lost your holding us to account skills at all, of course. I think we'd all like to put £30 million aside and say, this is ring fence, this is what we want to do. The trouble is, when we've got a £30 million hole in our budget just at the moment, it's difficult to know where that £30 million will come from, because what will we cut in order to put that money in? There will be new priorities coming out of this, undoubtedly, and I think they will reflect the priorities of our community and of our city. A Green New Deal for our city, which does respond to a lot of the issues that have been raised. A new deal for our communities that recognises where there have been systemic inequalities and injustices. And those are where we will need to prioritise. It's been our core mission, and Labour colleagues mentioned this, James McCashkir and others mentioned this in their speeches. It's always been core to our mission as a Labour administration to help the most vulnerable and to ensure that everyone is able to take full advantage of the opportunities that our borough presents. The opportunities are going to be more limited. We know that and acknowledge that going forward, but we as a council will do everything we can to ensure that all of our residents have the chance to take advantage of the opportunities that are created in their communities, and that our communities stay as strong and united as they have been in the last 4 months. Nobody pretends this will not be a great challenge. It will be, as we continue to look over our shoulders to see whether there will be a second wave of this terrible virus. But if anywhere can, Southwark can, and I'm confident that, as I said, we will build a greener, safer, healthier and better borough.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Councillor John. Was it right on it? Right. I shall now move to the vote on Amendment A. Only the elected councillors can vote on these items. All councillors in favour, please click the yes button now. All those councillors against, please click the no button now. Nothing's happening.
Madam Mayor, is tallying up, so I'm just waiting for the tally to finish.
Okay.
Right, Madam Mayor. Okay. I think some people are still making some adjustments to their voting.
Yes. I have no idea.
Right, Madam Mayor. Those in favor of the amendment, I've got 15 in favor of the Amendment A, and I've got 38 who are voting against Amendment A. So it looks like a couple of members have not voted yet. Sorry, there's been some changes now, so I'll give it about 30 seconds. Okay, Madam Mayor, I've got 14 members voting in favor of the amendment and 41 members have voted against. That's 42 members. It's already a majority voting against. Do you still want me to check those who are abstaining? There's no reason to do that because we're not a recorded vote.
Pardon?
There are 43 members who have voted against Amendment A and 13 for. There's no reason for me to check the abstentions because the 43 members is already a majority voting against, and no one has actually asked for a recorded vote. So I'll take it that the Amendment A is lost.
Right, okay. Right, Amendment A is lost. So we shall now vote on the substantive. Right. Only the elected councillors can vote on this item. All councillors in favour, please click the yes button now. All those councillors against, please click the no button now. I'm a yes, you know. Nightmares. don't think it's come up.
Madam Mayor, I'll give it 20 seconds for the votes to tally up. Some members are still voting.
Oh, do it, just do it.
Madam Mayor, I've got 54 voting in favor, sorry, 55. And there are no votes against.
So what is it? It's lost or carried away?
So that's carried, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, the motion is carried. Thank you, Chidi. Right, so we've done the substantive. Right. We will now take a 5-minute comfort break. All cameras will be turned off and all mics will be muted for this time. We will reconvene at 8:40, I think. Yeah. Okay, we will reconvene at 8:40. Thank you. Right. Welcome back, everybody. This evening's second theme debate is on the subject of Southwark Stands Together, Southwark's commitment to tackle racial inequalities. We shall now consider community evidence, and the first community submission on the theme is from Nicholas Okuwulu. Are you there, Nicholas?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ah, thanks, Nicholas.
Good evening, everyone. Many thanks to all the councillors and all the comments that have been made today. I just want to talk about some of the issues that many of us in the community face at this moment. It's not a criticism or anything. I think when I started doing a lot of the community work that I do, so my name is Nicholas Okuwulu, I run an organisation called Pen People. I also set up the Livesey Exchange on the Old Kent Road. I've also recently set up a Southwark unified network of Black and ethnic minorities network forum, which comprises a number of local community organisations. As I said, when I started, you know, the whole theory was about fairer future for all. And I think COVID has highlighted the disparities that we have in our community. What we're looking for is for us to be able to build a better community capacity for local residents in the local borough, better support for grassroots organisation to provide opportunities to the local community in terms of reducing the social and economic opportunity inequalities that exist in our borough at this moment in time. Through the projects that we've run, we've met a great number of people in groups who want to better the lives of local people and feel that if they had better communication between the vision of the council and the vision of the future of Southwark, they would be better informed to understand what's going on much better. We also feel that we also need better capacity direction from the community development team and organisations in Southwark. Many people feel that they don't know what's going on and what's happening and need to be more enlightened in terms of what could actually take place. Southwark has a very diverse community. I and many others feel very proud to live in this borough, but believe that together we can all do much better for our community. Listening to the speaker, Nick Johnson, he said, how do we capitalise on this? I think, I think in terms of what Southwark has done, you guys have done a really good job, but there are many people in our communities who can support the facility in terms of providing a better borough for everyone. I think for me, that's it really. I think, as I said, I think what I would really like to see is how the council can better work with the community and grassroots organisation like myself to provide better opportunities for local residents and to make the borough a very diverse borough that's happy for everyone and is a borough fit for all. Many thanks.
Thanks, Nicholas. That was perfect timing. The second community evidence submission is from Ebenezer Mensah. Are you there, Ebenezer?
Yes, I am. 1 second, please.
Yeah, you've got 3 minutes.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Ebenezer Mensah. I came to the UK at the age of 5 with my mum by herself. I grew up in Southwark, basically, which has shaped my informative years. I'm an actor, producer, director. I have a YouTube channel with my friends, which we created, which has got 1.3 million subscribers on our channel, which is mainly a young audience from teens to young adults. I could say I have a very good experience with young people because I've been in their shoes to a certain extent. So communication with them is very easy between me and them. I understand some of their choices that they made because I've had to make similar decisions, so I understand. That's why I like working alongside my community. I've worked with Pecan, 99 Peckham High Street, Southwark building managed by Pen People, Project Remake, run by King's College, Uni, and Prospects. Right now, me and my friend was running a music project at Livesey Exchange where we encourage the youth to come and learn a skill or shaping their vocals. If we see potential, we manage them, and release their music as artists under the label. I have another project called How To Roadman, where I use media to become the link for the youth. For example, link to jobs, link to opportunities, and where to get help. Anyone who wants more information, you can take my details and we can get in contact about that. I feel like young people who don't even live, people who don't even live or have just moved into the borough are thrown the information and support. If people like me, myself, was to be given information and support, even signposted and given the right opportunities, people in the same position as me can deliver the service to its full potential with the help of Southwark, of course. I know if we had a conversation with the young people in the community, it would be two completely different conversations. Why? Because people like me who have grown up in the community have built up a wealth of trust with young people, which is hard to buy. We have the reach like many other organizations, but the only difference is we built it with trust and without any support. That's why people like myself might feel the inequality lies, because people who have grown up in the borough haven't been given the support to do a meaningful project for the community. If it wasn't for Nicholas, I wouldn't be in this meeting. So if he was busy, where would I be getting information from? I think people in the same position as me would like this to happen, to be given support as a local resident, the information and access to grants and contracts to fulfill a meaningful project. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ebenezer. I think you're trying to say it's all about communication. The next person to speak is Dr. Victor Alicia. Are you there?
I am here. Good evening.
Good evening. You have 3 minutes, Victor.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Lady Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for giving me the opportunity to speak. Just want to start with a brief background. I'm a retired police officer, served 35 years in 3 police forces. And one of those forces was the Metropolitan Police. And I was fortunate enough to serve in Southwark for 4 years as a superintendent. So Southwark is still dear in my heart. My sister, who couldn't make it to the meeting tonight, Victoria, lives in Southwark with a young daughter, my niece. So I care for them and I care for the way that they receive policing services, which is what I want to talk about tonight. Now, the police institution is a powerful social institution that can make a real significance to people's lives and people's well-being when it provides a service that's fair and equitable. Now, I've worked on stop and search for the vast majority of my career, and this is not a criticism of stop and search. This is a way that I think it can be done better to help the communities of Southwark under the Black Lives Matter. So just some statistics. Southwark is the 5th borough that uses stop and search the highest. It carries out around 30,000 stop and searches a year. And the reasons for the stop and search are documented. 70% is for antisocial behaviour, 18% is for weapons, and 13% is for key crimes. Now, the outcomes from those searches, 70% of those searches result in drugs possession. 0.6% is for firearms. 8.2% is for weapons, blades, and pointed articles. 13% is for theft, and 2.2% is for violence, GBH and the rest of it. Now, if you take into account that the Met is saying that they use stop and search to reduce violence and take knives off the street, those stats do not bear what the Met is saying they use stop and search for. And when we look at the demographic of positive outcomes, 19% of the positive outcomes are against Asians, 20% are against blacks, 22% is for white. So the differences are not great. However, what I want to talk to you about this evening is a practice that's developing where police officers, where they search a group of young black boys and young white boys together, they handcuff the black boys. Now, one of the most graphic examples we've seen of that just recently is the handcuffing of Bianca Williams on the media, the athlete. Now, the thing that concerns me is that this casual use of handcuffs sends some stereotypical message that Black people are more dangerous, Black people commit more crimes, Black people are more dangerous to the well-being of the officer, Black people have no voice and no influence. What I'd like to ask under the Black Lives Matter is, will the council work with the police to find out their rationale and their explanation for handcuffing Black people when they stop and search them and nothing happens at the end? Will the council ask the police to actually produce use of force forms which they should complete when they handcuff people to search them? So my question is, Councillor Okoto, will you work with the police to find out these questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Okoto will give you a written answer, okay? That's very interesting. Actually, I'm quite interested in those statistics. And so finally, we have Aisha Ahmad from Southwark Scholars.
Hello, hi, thank you all. I'd like to introduce my group as representatives of the Southwark Scholarship Scheme. We've individually prepared evidence, but we'll keep to the 3-minute time. I personally was able to attend medical school, many thanks to the council, and I've just qualified 3 months ago as a junior doctor and joined the front line. I've seen and experienced the structural racism and an unconscious bias that exists towards those from a BME background, both in medical school and now in the workplace at the height of COVID-19. And a very recent example of this was being blamed for my culture for the recent evidence that shows that those from our background are at greater risk of dying. And so I appreciate the education and acknowledgement that exists in the council and by Public Health England on the matter. But I think greater discussion on structural racism and the steps that need to be taken to protect those from our background needs to be discussed. So that's my point for today, and I'll pass it on to my colleagues.
I'll talk about racial inequalities within education. Looking at leadership, we have less than 2% Black assistant principals and over 90% white assistant principals. I think that leadership should be representative of the students within those schools. This is important that there is representation within leadership for the following reasons. Predicted grades. Black pupils will suffer the most from A-levels being cancelled as they routinely outperform their predicted grades. A think tank found that non-Black teachers tend to have lower expectations of Black students and are likelier to negatively judge or more severely discipline Black pupils. Other concerns are pupil premium attainment gap, the school to prison pipeline, and exclusion rates. I'll hand over to Joshua.
As an education advocate, I have advised parents in over 100 permanent exclusion review cases. Over 90% of those cases involved the pupil who identified as Black Caribbean. I have witnessed the devastating impact the process of permanent exclusion has on Black Caribbean pupils, which includes their mental health, their academic drive, and social isolation, to name a few. It's clear the Assembly acknowledges that Black Caribbean and mixed white Black Caribbean children have rates of permanent exclusion 3 times that of the pupil population as a whole. That's a statistic which has been increasing year on year since 2012-13. I would like to recommend to the Assembly that in its work on Southwark Stands Together, the Council actively encourages mainstream schools in Southwark to join the Council in taking meaningful steps to change the overrepresentation of Black and mixed white Black Caribbean pupils affected by permanent exclusion. I'd like to hand over to Mary now.
Okay, because you've got your 3 minutes is running out. So are you going to sum up, Mary?
Yeah, so just to quickly sum up, with a high percentage of Black and BAME students finding it hard to get into professional careers, with the SRA publishing that only 21% of lawyers in the UK are from BAME communities and only 3% of lawyers are Black. My question is to Councillor Johnson Shitu. What is the council doing to encourage organisations in the borough to address social injustices and racism?
Okay, thanks, Mary. Councillor Johnson-Situ will give you a written answer after the meeting. And Is there anybody else in your group who needs to speak, or can we move on to the last person?
Yes, I'm Umu. I'm also, I was a recipient of the Southwark Scholarship in between 2015 and 2018. I just wanted to briefly bring to the attention of the council one of the inequalities faced that I have observed and faced as a new graduate.
Just a minute, could you say your name so we can put it on the minutes?
Yeah, it's Umu. My name is Umu.
Okay. Okay.
So one of the inequalities I have faced and observed as a new graduate in the workplace, and that concerns the very apparent obstacles to career progression within various fields of work. For example, in the organisation I work for, a lot of the Black and ethnic minority members of the organisation are at the lower grades, and they don't seem to progress throughout the organisation. So I believe that one of the things that I would recommend that we can do as Southwark, for Southwark young people, is mentorship, which is to encourage people, and I think it should be targeted mentorship as well. So people who are from Southwark, who also are from the sort of similar backgrounds of low socioeconomic backgrounds, and who are Black and minority ethnic, who have progressed through a certain career path, to mentor those who are coming up. And that can also provide some sort of role model, and also sort of just give an example as to how you can progress through a career. And then it makes it more real and relatable.
Yeah. So what career are you talking about?
I'm a civil servant.
Oh, civil service. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think we move to the last person who's giving community evidence, and that is Oliver Rahman from the Active Communities Network. Are you there?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, Lady Met. So yeah, just a little bit about myself. I'm born and bred in Southwark, born in Guy's Hospital, grew up in the borough, Rockingham Estate. Most of my teenage life, grew up in North Peckham Estate, and then lived most of my adulthood life in Bermondsey. And I feel proud of growing up in Southwark and all that it's offered me. But one of the things that what I did see as growing up, how I had to navigate myself, was being from a BME background. And I think that was challenging growing up, in those circumstances 30 plus 40 years ago. It was a very different Southwark Council then. It was a very different Southwark Borough. But what we have, seen over the years, and as myself growing up in this borough, is the change the borough has gone through, but we have still the same issues. Data has shown us 30 years ago what these young people are saying now in some of these evidence, that, what Victor said or what Ebenezer or what Nicholas said is still the same. That data is there. It didn't need BLM. It didn't need a lot of this stuff to happen. It's always been there. We as an organisation, I set this up 13 years ago because I felt quite rebellious to the way not just local authority, but the government was, using the word inclusion in the wrong way. You've got to look at cultural sensitivities. It's a lot of our communities in Southwark. We are very diverse. We should feel proud of that. We have a diverse borough that can offer so much to the local, economy. And one of the things that we see is that we still struggle to understand individual cultural identity and cultural sensitivities when working with young people. Black Lives Matter, working with one community is not the same with working with another ethnic group or another community. It needs to be worked in a very different way because of the way their cultural background, and shows the way young people live at home into the way they live into modern society. They live in two lives, and that is very important. So Active Communities was set up. We use sports. So a little bit what we do as an organisation, we use sports to engage young people. Everything that was said, you've got a group of young people that are really excelling thanks to Southwark and the offers and the kind of opportunities that are given. But there's a huge number. We have over the 30 years, maybe quadrupled in youth population, if not 44,000 plus. We need to look at the supply and demand situation of young people in those communities. There is a more of a demand and there's less of supply of how to work with these young people. And this has grown. As myself as an adult, in Southwark and still working there, the organisation we set up was to try and kind of do that. We're bringing also funding because we know how local authorities are cut back. We were set up in the recession to look at other ways of working and bringing funding into the borough. And that has got to be a smart way. So the third sector can offer a lot more. It's things like what we do in joint ventures. For every pound that local authority brings in, we can bring in £4. So, the social investment and return can be higher. If inequality is going to change, you need to work with those communities that Ebenezer talks about or Nicholas talks about that can add value to the economy, add value to Southwark, make our young people feel proud, not frightened of the police, not frightened of local authority, not frightened to go to school, because these are some of the challenges that young people are facing. You have to understand more about those cultural sensitivities in the communities before we can make change. And inequality lies across everybody. One thing that Active Communities did, we set up the organisation not to label anyone. Labelling became a problem 20 years ago. It became the antisocial behaviour came out of something that became very relevant in local authorities. If you done something, you became antisocial. Again, this is not something that young people want to do. If they hang around in groups, it's antisocial. But if adults hang around out in front of a pub, it's not antisocial. But that changed over the years. But what we need to do, we need to really understand the communities. The data's been there for years. It's been, and Dr. Fenton, has brought it to the front line. If you read this as an organisation, we have a lot of data, a lot of research that we've done, a lot of universities. There's other organisations in the borough, and it's important. It's really important that the councillors, they're doing amazing jobs, but we need to go more deep into those communities to understand a lot more to make change.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to thank all the people who have given us community evidence, and please stay with us if you wish to listen to the We will now consider the themed motion on Southwark Stands Together, Southwark's commitment to tackle racial inequalities. Councillor Johnson Situ, Cabinet Member for Growth, Development and Planning, you have 7 minutes in which to present the themed debate and the motion on the theme.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to everyone who's come along for the community evidence. It's very powerful to hear from everyone. Over the last 2 weeks, we've started our listening events as part of Southwark's response to the structural inequality and racism highlighted by the Black Lives Matter movement. At one of these events, the facilitator asked about our attendees' experience of structural racism, to which it gave me the opportunity to reflect on my most memorable experience of racism and a structural inequality as well. The experience so vivid and etched into my memory, if asked, my response would be as clear now as it was then. I was 18 years old at university and nursing a headache. On my way to the shops, a car drove by and a driver yelled out, "Monkey." A short moment, yet one that has stuck with me for decades afterwards. But Madam Mayor, I would be wrong to consider that my first experience, because my first experience of structural inequality and racism came from the moment of birth at King's College Hospital. As a Black woman, my mother was disproportionately more likely to die during childbirth, 5 times more likely. Potential complications in childbirth would mean I was disproportionately less likely to survive. The disproportionate impact of poverty within our minority communities meant that both my parents had to go back to work just after 6 weeks. It meant that when I was of age, I was unable to go to nursery and experience the wraparound support needed that everybody needs at that age as well. And my first experience of education was going to primary school. Education disparities meant that close to 3/4 of people in my year group in secondary school, which was a school 90% Black, Asian, and ethnic minority, didn't leave school with 5 A stars to see. And as the first time I was stop and search, it did not come as a surprise to me, as I was disproportionately more likely to be. That being said, many years on, we've seen significant improvements. Our schools are good at standing, and we're seeing significant rises in attainment as well. The Labour government introduced the Race Relations Act of 2000, which now means that public agencies must actively address discrimination of all forms. The commitment to give every child the best start in life, irrespective of race, led to the Labour government setting up Sure Start. And it was the Labour government following the death of Stephen Lawrence that set up the Stephen Lawrence Inquiry, which paved the way for how we see a significant shift in the role of institutions of fighting racism and injustice. And I know the party of the opposition are also committed to tackling racism and injustice. However, whilst Labour government has sought to begin the good work to end inequalities, we have seen subsequent Conservative governments wind back that progress made. Approximately 1,000 Sure Start centres closed. Black people are now 9 times more likely to be stop and search, and some parts of our minority communities as half as likely to hold managerial, director, or senior official roles. We've also seen how COVID has removed the sticking plaster on health inequalities within our communities. We know Black and Asian people are 4 times as likely to die from COVID-19. And what I want to make clear today is that it is not being Black, Asian, or minority that it is a health risk. It's the conditions in which BAME and wider poorer communities are forced into. It's structural injustice executed through wealth, education, and living arrangements that manifest themselves in health. And we here in Southwark will do our part to address these inequalities. We are committed to the ending the cycle of inequality and providing a fairer future for all. And that's why I'm proud of the policies that this administration has implemented and championed over recent years, such as our free healthy school programs, which help families right across the borough. Our work to address the disproportionate impact of health conditions such as obesity through health-free swim and gym, a personal favorite of my mum, I should add. We have backed the ambition of our young, diverse population through Southwark Scholars Programme to support young people to go to university at a time where rising fees could discourage minority groups. And finally, our programme to support Black, Asian and minority ethnic businesses through initiatives such as the High Street Challenge has made significant difference. Simply put, we have come a long way, but we know there still remains challenges. And this is why we have launched our response, Southwark Stands Together, an approach which has cross-party support, which is guided by our commitment to listen, but most importantly, to act. Over the last 2 weeks and over the next 6, we will be listening to our communities on their experience on structural inequalities and racism. And the work will cover health, communities and culture, employment and business, education, and interaction with police. We will also be listening to Southwark Council staff in their experience. This will lead to recommendations to bring forward to Cabinet, and we will also work with anchor institutions and organisations in the borough. And I was pleased to join Councillor Crine in writing to businesses and organisations in the borough, and we've already seen a significant positive response as well. The second pillar of our response is reflecting on the individuals that we celebrate in our public open spaces through our anti-racist audit. Working with the community, this will also provide the opportunity to discuss how we celebrate and champion diversity in our borough. Finally, through our relationships with a number of sectors, we will seek to promote diversity in organisations we work with at all levels. Now, what I've described will not be easy. It will require us to come together as a borough, but I am confident we will, because our shared history is one when the borough has faced significant challenges, it has come together to meet them and pioneered the way for others to follow. Just like the old Metropolitan Borough of Bermondsey did when Ada Salter led efforts through her beautification committee to address the slum dwelling and promote good public health through planting 7,000 trees. Her committee brought together the public and private sector. They stood together. Or Dr. Harold Moosey, a physician who led the efforts for civil rights in the UK, but based out of Peckham, also supported the local community, offering free healthcare for kids. The community stood with him and his organisation, the League of Coloured People. Dr. Moosey paved the way for the Civil Rights Movement and the Civil Rights Act of 1965. They stood together. The community also stood together in the face of the 2011 riots, and the community stood together, and the morning after, from Walworth Road to Peckham and Lordship Lane, local people and the council got to work rebuilding their community. In the wake of the London Bridge attack, our borough came together again, from traders to residents and to local community groups, to say we will not be cowed by terror. And over the last 4 months, from community groups to mutual aid groups, the council and the health sector, we've come together to respond to the biggest challenge our community has faced yet, COVID-19. As we reflect on those that have gone before us, so it's for us to work tirelessly to ensure none of our communities are left behind, not on our watch. So Madam Mayor, I propose this motion as I know Southwark will stand together again. And in so doing, we'll show what can be done when you harness the energy of protest to shape policy for lasting change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Situ. The lead opposition spokesperson will now have an opportunity to reply to the Cabinet member's statement and speak to Amendment B, which was amended in the programme motion. Councillor William Humbo, you have 5 minutes in which to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the members of the community who attended to present the community evidence. I am pleased to speak in support of the motion and the Liberal Democrat amendment. Our group agree with this motion and its initiative we put together. In fact, this amendment tend to strengthen the motion not to replace it. It is very important when we talk about Black Lives Matters, we have to speak with one voice. Recently, I was proud to witness a peaceful event organized by an organization called Stand Up to Get to Racism. They actively campaign against racism and human rights under the banner of Black Lives Matter. It is encouraging that the council is responding to their concern, but it's not the first time that we heard about racism, and also it's not the first time that the council has made promises to act. In 2010, the council proposed fairer future for all. Then last year, a cross-party motion was successfully voted to promote equality and the value of diversity. This year, we have the cross-party initiative, Southwark Stand Together, that are called SST, and yet we still have so many problems in terms of diversity and inequality. I do welcome the broad project brought by SST, but we all need to do what we say. We need more than equality of opportunities. We do need to go further, and we need to create equality of positive outcomes for all. We do welcome the genuine cross-party cooperation at the council that will be fully supported by the council officers in our borough, but the high rate of school exclusion is favoring the growing inclusion into crime. This situation leads to youth violence. There is a civil war in our council estate. Black youngsters are killing Black youngsters. Black children are more likely to be a victim of violent crime, and they are also more likely to be stereotyped and stopped by the police. In our council estate, we, the Black parents, we do fear for the safety of our children. Politically, it's not about pointing the finger to the opposite party. We are all together in this. We should be all in the same side. We all lose if we cannot address this issue as a communal issue. And as a local authority, we have the duty to help those in need, in greatest need. As a councillor, we need to stay in touch with our communities to hear their concern and help where we can. It is likely that when we combine our effort together in this difficult period of time, we will always achieve the best. And I wanted to say thank you to all the support from the council officers from top to bottom, to our head teachers with their effort with our children, and also to our police officers for keeping security and peace in this difficult time we have been crossing. We have problems in Southwark with this cycle of exclusion, disempowerment, lack of role models, and violence. We, the councillors, are the councils, and we are responsible to these young people and to this community. We have the power to hold the police into account, to make a difference. We need to put our political differences on one side and with humility ask, what can we do to avert this inequality, to continue further? What can we do to ensure we are part of the solution, not part of the problem? Recently, The Guardian highlighted that the Southwark News Architect Design Service Framework, which is worth 100 million over the next 4 years, didn't have a single practice that was led by a Black architect. When something like this is happening, we need to question ourselves. We can do better than that. We need to be more inclusive and open the opportunities to all of us. I hope that the SST initiative is a chance for us all to, for a positive response, to accept that we will not undo the legacy of hundreds of years and find a solution to build a better future for our children. I am happy to work in this cross-party initiative in the area of education, in the area of the police, how to engage the relationship between the police and our young people, how to engage a better relationship between the BME community and our people. I want to ask all the councillors to be involved as much as they can in this project. and to
Yeah,
promote
you've done your 5 minutes, William. You need to sum up.
I want to say thank you for listening to me, and I'm asking all the councillors to support the motion and the Lib Dem amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right, thank you, William. As the part of the programme motion, the meeting has agreed to amend Amendment B. The meeting has also agreed to have a combined debate on the motion and the amendment. I have a list of members who have indicated they would like to speak. I will call them in order. Each councillor gets 3 minutes and 3 minutes only, and then we'll definitely have to mute you. So if you could keep it concise, I'd be very grateful. So the first councillor on my list is Councillor Cleo Soanes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. The brutal murder of George Floyd by US police officers has shocked the world and highlighted the systematic injustice, violence and racism experienced by BAME communities across the world. That's why I'm proud of Southwark Stands Together, coordinated by my good friend and colleague, Councillor Johnson Shittu. It aims to identify, listen and learn, and then tackle racism and inequality in the borough. I began my own teaching career right here in Southwark, so naturally I've taken a particular interest in Southwark's response to the educational engagement of our young people in the borough. We seek to want to properly understand young people's experience of inequality, injustice and racism in education, develop a plan of action for schools and others working together to change these experiences. Now, this may seem an upward task, but I can tell you that last Friday, we held our first gathering of 36 local educators, a group of head teachers and governors representative of our primary and secondary schools across the borough, with cross-party support by Councillor Hamara Halley, Councillor Andy Simmons, and facilitated by my good friend, Councillor Jasmine Ali. This roundtable meeting, supported by a great team of council officers. In 7 breakout workshops, we posed 2 main questions. What do you think needs to change and how would you prioritise? And what are some of the barriers you're experiencing to implement change? What would you want to do more? But more broadly, we wanted to get these individuals to understand and tell us the needs of our BAME students. What are the barriers they currently experience? What prevents our young people from feeling noticed? What helps them to tick? How do they get to know the children under their care? Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Initial feedback and comments from the workshop seemingly fell into 2 distinct categories, either around central government policy reform or the acknowledgement of changes which schools themselves could control right now in real time. Needless to say, there was an overwhelming call for curriculum change, one which would be relevant and meaningful, not only for our own BAME students, but all young people. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Now, where have you heard that 400-year-old mantra before? Are you like me that can recite Tudor facts in your sleep? Why is that? Why are we unable to universally recall the historical context of my own existence in this country, for example? Why do I have to rely on 4 weeks in October to be taught and learn about history, your history, about my history? But what about the Nationality Act of 1948 or the Emperor Windrush of the same year, the Race Relations Act of 65 that made the grounds of discrimination unlawful, or 71, the new Immigration Act which settled all rights for our Commonwealth citizens to settle in the UK? Britain had been sold as a magical place to live, notwithstanding my parents were certainly won over. Why is that? Why can't I recite those facts and dates in my own dreams? This journey will inevitably be a marathon and not a sprint. So we look forward to meeting more parents and Southwark's young people in the weeks to come. The new academic year seems a timely opportunity.
Councillor, you've got to sum up, sorry.
Raise these questions as we emerge from the COVID-19 lockdown and seek to re-establish our relationships with our respective school communities. So we are going to listen, learn and better reflect the needs of our young people from a range of diverse backgrounds. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Southwark stands together. Thank you.
Thank you, Cleo. Councillor Sunny Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's a privilege to be able to speak on this team motion. I'm going to pose this question to us because having listened to what everybody has said tonight, including Victor Olisa and all some of the young people who have spoken on this theme motion, conscience is an open mind, open wound. Only through can heal it. Now, if we don't start, that was is a quote from a fantastic, great African Islamic scholar. Now, we've listened to all these people spoken tonight about how our policies have affected them in different ways. If you look back over the last 10 years, 10 years, we've had even the last 20 years where we have Damilola Taylor's death. And since 2011, we had the London riot. And also in 2010, we have Tory Lib-Dem coalition government. What has changed? Not much. I mean, you've had the evidence tonight, but why hasn't anything changed? Is it because we are complacent, or is it because unconscious bias or racism? These are issues that have been posed to us tonight, which we need to listen. It's not just about listening, it's about acting, because we've been listening and all this talking has been going on for too long. And now it's time for action. How many Black people have benefited from our development initiative in the last 10 years? How many Black people have benefited in our contract, in procurement? You've heard all that tonight. How many people, how many life chances have wasted simply because the color of their skin looks different from ours, in most cases, Black? Is that a borough that is united? We say we are united to serve. If we are united to serve, obviously, the contribution of everyone should be respected, should be welcome. It seems all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Why is that? How does our policies on housing, licensing, education, social care affect other people, influence our policies and decisions that affects other people in accessing opportunities in our borough? It's time for parity esteem between all our communities and how we are treated. I think Black Lives Matter has exposed the weaknesses in our system and also the way our policies are being implemented. And Black Lives Matter has also enlightened us and encouraged us to look beyond what is on the surface. According to the former Archbishop of Westminster, for in the end, it is only through a deeper awareness of our common humanity and a clear recognition of the transcendent dignity of each person that we're inspired to act for the common good. Now, if it's yes, do we really want to act for common good?
Councillor, you've got to wind up now, sorry.
Thank you. I'm going to finish now. So therefore, I'm calling on us, and according to what the former Indian Prime Minister once said, irrespective of our political affiliation, individual color of our skin, we should be judged by the way we treat all ourselves. All life matters, all Black matters. In every policy design implementation, I think every life should matter, and therefore we should start from tonight and make all life matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. We now have Councillor Humara Ali. Councillor Ali, Humara. She gone? Ah. You've got 3 minutes, Councillor. I can't hear her. Is she muted?
Councillor Rowley, we can't hear you.
Oh.
You now? Yeah, you can. Sorry. Is that any better?
Yeah,
it is better now.
Can you start again?
Oh, I'll do my best. Sorry. Okay. Do you remember why you first stood for election? What pushed your buttons and triggered you into standing so that you could make a change? 25 months ago, I was elected to serve my community, having never known that normal people that look like me could do politics. I wanted to level the playing field and understand whether politicians were all talk or whether change actually happens. I looked forward to working collaboratively with anyone who wanted to help make things better for our community. 12 months ago, I enjoyed working cross-party with a variety of councillors by leading a motion to celebrate equality and diversity to stand up against hate. We jointly agreed that as councillors, we needed to set the example and stand up against the poor judgment of people like a Prime Minister who talked about watermelon smiles and pickaninnies. We also agreed a number of actions to move away from talking shops and tokenistic efforts where race, religion, gender, etc. are concerned. A defining moment in the chamber as Councillor Elisa stood up and said, "White people, you need to make this your fight." And now as people march under the Black Lives Matter banner, never a truer statement. So 12 months on, I am utterly disappointed that there has been little to no action on that motion. Come on, guys, equality is something we do cross-party. And if you believe that this is more important than the colour of the rosettes we wear, and the more important than our own egos, then we need to cut any defensiveness we have about the lack of action, and we need to have the confidence to hold tough conversations about priorities, because this is the priority. You will see in item 10 under the community evidence this evening that an anonymous constituent, yes, anonymous, has provided a horrendous story of racism in the workplace. It's 2020 and the so-called mechanisms for reporting racism don't work. So the work that we are doing cross-party here is absolutely imperative. Those diversity champions that we talked about could have helped with something like this. Equally, we hear in our listening exercises about the work of many community organisations. We voted last year to create a new civic award to celebrate these people. Once again, no action. I am honoured to be working alongside some really engaged councillors and officers on Southwark Stands Together, and I sincerely hope that this time we do more than talk and propose some actions. Politicians have a reputation for being all talk and no action. So I ask that this evening we vote this through with amendments, because it is important that we bring all the work that we want to do together into one place, and let's end those talking shops.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Evelyn Akoto, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Black Lives Matters. 3 words that has conjured up so many emotions. Whatever your personal thoughts about the movement, one thing you can't deny is that it's been a force for change, forcing society to look hard at the way ethnic minorities are treated, especially the Black community, forcing individuals and institutions to review their own biases, and certainly forcing a discussion we're now having. The inhumane killing of George Floyd brought to the fore the centuries of brutality and oppression that the Black race has had to endure. And for me, that day, we just saw a 21st century version of the days when Blacks could be set upon by dogs, hanged, and no one cared. But the movement has proved that people do care. And if we're going to bring about a change in how Black people are treated and perceived, we need allies. We need every race to help call out the injustice and to stand with the Black community. I always think of this analogy to explain this need. If you have someone who's been bullied, and his friends are also being bullied, their cries to be left alone won't hold much weight. It is usually when the friend of the bully get fed up and say, leave him alone. That's usually when a change is possible. So I'm proud that the council is leading the voice of allies, allowing colleagues to participate, to fight for a more equal society, talking to the community, working with partners to remove the structural inequalities that we find all around us. Jasmine, the Southwark scholars, and Ollie and others have already listed some of these inequalities. Now, change is not going to happen overnight. And I hear what Councillor Howard said. Inequalities is historic. But what we now have is a renewed sense of focus, energy, and most importantly, an opportunity to push the work further from where others left it. The Southwark Stands Together workstream highlights the council's commitment to a fairer future for all. And for that, I certainly commend this motion to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Councillor Alice MacDonald, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'm really glad to come after Councillor Akoto, because
As she says, we all have to be allies, particularly white councillors like myself, in this fight. And to be quite honest, I wasn't sure whether to speak or not tonight, frankly, because it did feel a bit uncomfortable. What would I say? Would I get the tone right? And what right did I really have to speak? But it's actually really important that we're all made to feel uncomfortable, to challenge ourselves. And it's vital that white people like me, white councillors like me, speak out, and more importantly, act, because racism is everyone's problem and everyone's fight. It might feel uncomfortable to talk about race, but what's even more uncomfortable is racism itself. George Floyd's death has forced a long overdue reckoning, pushing us all to reflect on what we are as a society and why these kind of inequalities have existed for so long. Like many people, I've been reading, thinking, trying to educate myself about what to do, personally, politically, and professionally. And I'm sure I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to probably say the wrong thing, do the wrong things, and I have to learn from those and do better. The Southwark Stands Together work is incredibly important, and it is incredibly important that we are all part of it. To be clear that racism exists and permeates our society in many different ways, as we've heard tonight. To challenge our own behaviour and those around us. To educate ourselves about the challenges and the solutions. To listen and support our communities. And we heard powerful solutions tonight from everyone who gave evidence, and really practical solutions. I represent Newington, a very diverse and vibrant ward full of community spirit and brilliant leaders from all backgrounds, including Felicia and Ollie, who both spoke earlier and who are doing great work to tackle inequalities in Newington and beyond. And as Ollie said, as councillors, we have to embed ourselves in our communities, listen, learn, and support the people who know how to make change happen and what kind of change needs to happen. And I'm also speaking today as chair of our Labour group of councillors. As a group, we are also looking and examining what we can do and what we can do better and what we must do better. And as political parties, we have to do much more to make sure we are representative of the communities we serve by encouraging and supporting Black and other underrepresented groups to be elected in the next council elections. And that means some of us may have to give up power to give others access to it. I'll never understand what it is to experience racism, but I can listen, educate and act, educate myself and act. Because we all have to take individual and collective responsibility to confront discrimination wherever we find it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Next we have Councillor Peter Babudu. Sorry, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to start by thanking those who brought community evidence. Like Holly, I was born in Guys and raised at first in Rockingham Estate, and have seen the effect of racism through much of my life. Black Lives Matter, and the reason that statement feels so radical at this time is because for way too long, Black lives haven't mattered. We've mentioned it today and seen that Black people are 4 times as likely to have died from coronavirus. It's great to have Victor Elisa in this session, but we know that criminal justice has been one of the places where Black people are far more likely to be stopped and searched. Some things say 10 times, and when Section 60 orders are in place, as much as 40 times. Deaths in police custody, more likely for Black people. We've seen it in the whole range of government failures, from the Windrush scandal, or way back to the Macpherson report. Racism blights so many Black people's lives. Now, the Black Lives Matter movement has gained increased attention because of the murder of George Floyd. And I mean, I felt his death acutely. My son was born the same day that George Floyd was murdered. And it made me reflect that as a Black child growing up, my child's far more likely to be excluded. We know even in Southwark, Black people are being excluded at twice the rate we would expect given their proportion of the population. And knowing that merely for being Black, you're more likely to be suspected, searched, arrested, charged, remanded, convicted, imprisoned, and you're more likely to die when you come into contact with the criminal justice system. You're more likely to die poorer, die sooner. How much longer must this go on? In the light of all this, I welcome the council's efforts. I welcome the anti-racist audit, the work of Southwark Stands Together, the listening exercise we're doing. but let's be honest with ourselves, so much more is needed. We need to look at ourselves and expect to find some hard truths some hard home truths that we'll need to engage with. Recognizing that today and this work is the first step, but really, if we're going to build back better, we need to be genuinely committed to a change, an uncomfortable change, but one that has been long overdue.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Maria Linford Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are all aware of the level of injustice and alienation felt by many of our residents who are in the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. I have a particular empathy with our large Latin groups, but my feelings and concerns are for all minorities. Racism, xenophobia, and intolerance are problems common to all societies, but every day, each and every one of us can stand up against racial prejudice and intolerant attitudes. The tensions have been made worse by the events of this year. I'm particularly worried about the surge of domestic violence in the months of lockdown, and the Black Lives Matter movement has cast light on the grievances, not just of Black people, but of all minority ethnic groups. We need to call for racial equality and police reform. Britain has its own problem with racial inequality. While the country has made some advances towards tolerance and equal opportunity over the past few decades, improvements have been made painfully slow. The objections of the status of slave traders is completely legitimate, but must not be ignored. We have to make a meaningful contribution to this debate by commissioning a statue or monument to represent diversity. We need to reproduce these deep inequalities so everyone has the chance to build a good life for themselves and their families. A few years ago, we named a street in the Elephant and Castle after an Ecuadorian scientist, Pedro José Vicente Maldonado. The street is called Maldonado Walk. The Latin Americans and particularly the Ecuadorians have been deeply touched by this gesture. Perhaps we can think on some similar ideas to celebrate a respected member of the Black community. I have been thinking about our relations with minorities and what we have to do to demonstrate our position of concern and support. One of our actions that come from Take to highlight our message is to modify the Business Excellent Award program by starting an award for the business that launches the most innovative diversity outreach plan. Another will be to create an arts event encompassing performance, music, and the representational arts on the theme of cultural integration. Initiatives such as these will be dramatic demonstrations for our desire to embrace our minority communities and will help to underpin the amendment, which has my wholehearted support. As I have time, I want to thank profusely all the officers and staff of the council for the amazing work that they have done during this dramatic time since the lockdown. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Linford Hall. That was great. Councillor Martin Seaton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to speak. But I want to address the issue of race, not from the heinous crime committed in broad daylight with cameras watching in the United States of America, because I'm confident that the American judicial system will ensure justice is done on behalf of all Americans. I want to look at Southwark. Southwark, located in one of the world's most magnificent city, London, the capital of one of the world's most magnificent, most significant countries, Great Britain. We have a great story to share. Southwark is home to one of the largest African and BAME communities in Great Britain. The last census suggested that 47% of Southwark's population is BAME or mixed race. Despite the many reported adversities, these communities are thriving. We have the largest BAME councils across both parties ever recorded since record began. And I note with some embarrassment that the party opposite have recently offered BAME parliamentary candidates in Bermondsey and Old Southwark and Camberwell and Peckham constituencies. I say to the party opposite, well done. However, if when actually in control, you sought the representation parity you allude to while out of power, dare I refer to political cynicism. But I want to take this opportunity to compliment Councillor Peter John. He has steered Southwark Labour through perilous times. While in opposition, he highlighted the party opposite's lack of regard for genuinely affordable housing, despite Southwark is London's largest municipal landlord, effectively abolishing the department, merging it with environment, undermining the department's officer professional credentials. Peter's consistent, determined leadership led to Southwark Labour gaining power in 2010. Now, in power, our key strategic message, a fairer future for all, demonstrated Peter's, indeed Southwark Labour's commitment to all communities. And where we find disadvantage, structural or unintended bias, we have and will continue to challenge and insist upon appropriate remedial change. The audit is an appropriate mechanism to ensure that our fair future theme policies are continuing being upheld. The audit should most certainly review how Southwark BAME communities are faring. It is my sincere desire all communities are reviewed, and with particular attention to white working class boys, men and women often overlooked in these circumstances. The audit should result in action, with community never taking action without their knowledge and consent. Madam Mayor, I commend this motion to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor John Hartley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's clear from the contributions of my colleagues across this chamber that Southwark Council is an organisation that does care about the lives of our Black, Asian and minority ethnic residents, that we do think Black Lives Matter. Part of the problem, I think, is that really across the world at the moment, almost everybody is saying that they think Black Lives Matter. I mean, whether that's, you know, if you just look at sport, you've got convincing cases like the resumption of football, with footballers having the message across their back, and you've got slightly less convincing cases like sort of the efforts made by Formula One or, well, NASCAR. I mean, where you can look and say, well, I mean, at least they're trying, and that's a good thing because they weren't before. Also, those that weren't trying before, we see that Boris and the Tory government have decided that they will announce a review. They're ignoring, well, recently the Windrush report, the Lanny report, as others have mentioned, as we go back in time, 20 years ago, we had the Macpherson report. And many of those things have either not been implemented or rolled back further and further. Stephen Lawrence actually died over 27 years ago. And pretty much everybody who's struggling now with police interaction, the young people of colour on our street, weren't even born at the time that happened. As the government announces another review on essentially the same issues, cynics have already suggested that they're probably going to carry on with these reviews until they get the answer they want. But I think we're all clear what the answer is and the kind of change that needs to be made. I mean, even the Met's Deputy Commissioner, Stephen House, talking to the London Assembly today, acknowledges that there's genuine anger in the Black communities of London and talks about what he calls relationship issues between the police and communities in areas like Southwark. But would those issues be as problem if the studies and the reviews pointing out the problems, the discrepancies and the inequalities that have already previously happened, if those studies had been mentioned and implemented, it's hard to believe that those issues would be as difficult today as they are now. And I would be interested, for instance, in Dr. Elisa's view on that. But I'm going to take my cue from his sister, as previously mentioned. And I share some of Alice MacDonald's hesitancy to be talking about this issue, whether it's, you know, an issue that I should be standing up and saying, but it's clearly something that we all have to work together to deal with. Even if watching the hideous video of George Floyd's death, you weren't in a position, like myself, not in a position to say, oh goodness me, that could have been me, but for the obvious reason that it was very unlikely to be. But all of us need to take that approach, and we need to listen to the communities that are most affected, which is why our approach on this issue of identifying, listening and learning, as Councillor Soames made so clear earlier, is the way forward, that we're actually listening to the communities that are affected. Because whilst I think we all thought it was probably fairly fun to see Jen Reid's statue standing proudly where Colston was only a few weeks ago.
Right, you're going to have to sum up now, John, sorry.
Very, very much, Madam Mayor. It's already clear that the people of Bristol want to consider for themselves what they think is appropriate to replace that statue. And that's what we're doing here in Southwark. We're trying to work with the communities to find what those best solutions are, because it's better when we do these things together, and that's why Southwark stands together.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Graham Neal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I was going to speak this evening about the article in the Architects Journal that was picked up by The Guardian about the invitation to architects' practice to pitch for work here in Southwark Council. I'd started to prepare a speech joining with the London Mayor in attacking our administration and individuals in the administration over shortcomings in the affair. But however, on reflection, and given the situation that we find ourselves in, I'm simply unable to dig out those councillors over that unfortunate oversight. Madam Mayor, there are times to be partisan, and there are times when, as opposition councillors, we are required to hold this administration to account. And there may be times when that may include a degree of antipathy. But Madam Mayor, I feel that this is not the time. I'm sure that those involved have learnt their lessons from the experience and will be making changes accordingly. And as opposition councillors, I'm sure that we are ready to help in that process. The opposition group has concerns that full advantage is not being taken of our knowledge and our skills during this crisis. Like all councillors in this borough, we stood for election in order to serve. As Joe Cox MP said, we are far more united and have far more in common with each other than things that divide us. Madam Mayor, in summary, could I simply thank yourself and all my colleagues for all the work that they've undertaken for their communities over the last few months and for their commitments in serving the communities they represent. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. And finally, Councillor Leo Pollock. Leo? Ah, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Southwark stands together as one of the most diverse boroughs in the country. We know that our diversity is our strength, and so much of the and I want to really refer to actually some of what Councillor Neal was alluding to in his speech just now. So much of the dynamism of Southwark's council house building programme is partly attributable to the diversity of our Office of Workforce, the influence of our diverse resident steering groups, and the ethos of Southwark residents and community groups pulling together to build a better, more just society in our borough. We take great pride that over 50% of our new homes officers are from Black, Asian and other ethnic minority backgrounds, and over 70% are women. But as we heard from the critical testimony of Southwark scholars Aisha, Dominique and Joshua, there's so much unconscious bias, casual racism and systemic barriers in so many of our barriers in so many of sectors of our economy that die hard. And I think it's important where the council's own activities aren't creating opportunities for residents or affecting the population we serve, that we have the capacity to create self-critical and confront some hard truths. Council house building programme, we brought forward a new architects framework last year with the view to bringing forward a new variety of skills and perspectives into our design pool and create meaningful pride of place with buildings that we deliver. We removed many of the usual turnover, insurance, past experience barriers that are present in procurement processes, and we had 20 new practices and 21 Southwark-based practices who came onto the framework. In spite of that, we were hugely frustrated that just hundreds of BAME awarded practice, frustratingly low numbers were led by Black, Asian and other ethnic minority background architects, and some unsuccessful practices rightly drew attention to that. So the work on Southwark Stands Together here is critical. Rather than shake this off, we've embarked on a series of listening exercises, looking not only at our procurement processes, equalities monitoring and data collection, but listening to the experiences of working architects from underrepresented backgrounds and young people who experience the kind of barriers that we've been hearing around. Exclusionary language, long and expensive training that excludes people from deprived backgrounds, slow efforts to decolonize the Eurocentric curriculums in many design schools, and the unconscious biases that so many gatekeepers bring to selection interviews, not to mention the antiquated old boys culture that persists in many parts of the industry. Since these shortcomings have come to light, we've begun to listen, we've begun to act, looking seriously at the legal options for improving the cultural diversity of practices working on our schemes, making sure that awarded practices were brought into a programme to address diversity in the sector through mentoring, internship, placement and recruitment practices, challenging partners and establishing a new design access initiative, which we're calling the Dare to Design programme, bringing study, mentoring and sketch competitions to Southwark teenagers from underrepresented backgrounds with clear routes into the profession. We need to use this seminal historic moment to drive real change and break down the barriers that have held back too many for too long. So we'll continue to listen, continue to learn and continue to act. I'm confident that the important work Johnson, Evelyn and others are leading on will provide that focus, energy and impetus that we need to ensure that there's greater equality of authorship over Southwark's built environment in the years ahead. Southwark
Okay,
stands
Leo,
together,
you're going to have to
and I
sum
strongly
up,
commend this
sorry.
motion.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Leo. We've reached the end of this session. So I shall ask Councillor Johnson Situ to respond to the debate. Johnson, you have 3 minutes in which to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To start off, I want to thank everybody that came along with the community evidence. So just Nicholas, Ebenezer, Dr. Aisha, Dr. Alyssa, Mary, Umu, Dominique, Joshua, Ollie. I think it's fair to say, and certainly many of my colleagues reflected on this in their comments. Everything you contributed to the debate was both powerful, insightful, and would really hope that you would both participate in Southwark Stands Together moving forward. And I know many of you already participating in the different themes as well. In direct response to some of the questions, I think the testimony that and the point that Mary raised in terms of the different challenges in the different sectors and ensuring that we're involving other organisations is a really important one. And that's why we've written out to businesses and organisations and institutions right across the borough as well. And we'll continue to work on that as well. In terms of the debate itself, I would want to thank each and every single person who's contributed to this debate. I think what you would have seen is people contribute their own personal experience. You would have heard a sense of frustration as well. But also what I take away is a strong commitment to make sure that this moment and this time and this work that we're going to do over the next few weeks is not like any other time that has gone before us as well. I just want to quickly pick up on Councillor Hamara Ali's point. I don't think it's necessarily accurate that nothing has been done on the equality and diversity motion. I think it's important to recognise the amount of work that's gone into that cross-party motion, and it was really good and important to see that come forward. But I know work has been taken forward, and it will feed into the work that we're doing on Southwark Stands Together. And I welcome the fact that Lib Dem colleagues and Lib Dem members have participated in the Southwark Stands Together moving forward. I want to end on these couple of points. A lot of colleagues have mentioned the big challenge we've had is we've had a national government, which quite frankly, it's just not been a priority. And for the Prime Minister to say after recent events that there would be a review of current policy is absolutely a slap in the face. And it's a slap in the face for communities, but also it erodes trust in the wider public as well, because our motion details a number of recommendations and a number of reviews that have already happened, which have not been implemented in itself as well. And sadly, this is just an example of the Tory approach to society in its whole, and where inequality has widened, not just within our minority communities, but the poor, the working class as well. So this is a symptom of a national government which seems not to care and which has a lot of rhetoric but doesn't deliver as well. I believe the work that we will do in Southwark will be important for two reasons. A, it will take us further in terms of addressing the issues in Southwark, but also show how it can be responded to and how we can address these big issues as well. In respect of next steps over the next 6 weeks, I would really encourage all councillors to, as much as possible, try and get involved in any of the general listening events or any of the themes as well. The council's just launched a survey and which will be circulating as well. And please do make sure that as many of our community groups fill in and feed into that survey as well. I commend the motion and hope that we pass this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Situ. The guillotine has now fallen. We will not have time for the members' question, and we will now move to the vote. I shall now move to the vote on Amendment B. Only the elected councillors can vote on these items. All those councillors in favour, please click the yes button now. And all those councillors against, please click the no button now. Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think the votes are unanimous. We've got 55 votes in favour and no votes against. So the amendment is carried.
The amendment is carried. I think we're going to now move to the
vote on the
report.
substantive.
Okay. Right, we will now vote on the substantive. Only the elected councillors can vote on the substantive. All the councillors in favour, please click the yes button now. All those councillors against, please click the no button now.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are 55 votes in favour and no votes against. So it is unanimous.
The vote is carried and unanimous. We voted on the substantive. Now what? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, we've done that. As the guillotine has now fallen, we have up to 15 minutes to consider each report. Neighbourhood planning, plan to be made a material consideration in planning decisions relating to the South Bank and Waterloo neighbourhood area. The recommendations are formally moved. Councillor Adele Morris, you have indicated that you would like to speak on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say it's really good to see this actually finally being approved. It's been a long time coming. Bankside Neighbourhood Plan was one of the front runners when it was first introduced in 2011, and the South Bank, the Sour Neighbours followed shortly afterwards. There were some tussles, I will admit, about boundaries between the two different neighbourhood plans. I am sorry to say that the Bankside one, everybody gave up because they just found the hurdles a little bit too much to jump through with the council. So it was not an easy process, but Zone have managed to get it through, and I congratulate them on their work in doing that. And I hope that it is indeed used as a material planning document when the time comes. It will remain to be seen how effective it is, but congratulations to them on getting it through.
Have you finished, Adele?
Sorry, yes, thank you, Madam. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Martin Seaton would like to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm grateful that Councillor Morris has spoken first. I want to first of all give extreme appreciation that finally we have a neighbourhood forum which has and will have teeth. In my view, we need a neighbourhood forum of this kind wherever we have development areas. Those areas need effective representation. This is a strategic necessity to ensure that local people have a voice, not simply a voice, but a voice that we as members of the planning committee must take into consideration. But I've made it my duty, nevertheless, that in support of neighbourhood forums to ensure that local councillors, ward councillors are able to participate in the processes and the decision-making of planning committee. I've now made sure that ward councillors participate in our briefings with officers. They can accompany us on site visits, and of course they have access to all the evidence that committee members will consider as part of their determination. But nevertheless, the neighbourhood forums is an important development because these are ordinary community members, either residents or businesses, participating in the process of providing good quality evidence to planning committee. And I, as planning chair, will most certainly respect their views, and I would encourage other members here also to do the same. So well done to them, and I look forward to other neighbourhood forums being evolved across the borough, and we hope that the process of establishing a neighbourhood forum will be less bureaucratic in future. Please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Do any other members wish to speak on this item? I don't think there is anybody. I shall now move to the vote on this report's recommendations. Those in favour of the report recommendations?
Agreed.
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 Right.
Agreed.
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 It has been agreed.
Yes, it has, Madam Mayor.
Great.
The motion is carried. I love it when you all agree. Right. So report number 2, the pay policy statement. The recommendations are formally moved. I think. Do any, no, they don't want to speak, do they?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so I shall now move to the vote on the report recommendations. Vote on report recommendation 5.2. Is this agreed?
Agreed. Agreed.
I love it when you all agree.
Agreed.
It's music to my ears. Right. This substantive motion is carried. The next one, 5.3, Members Allowance Scheme 2020 to 2021.
Agreed.
Agreed. You just want to go to the pub.
Agreed.
The recommendations are formally moved. It is all agreed. I shall now move to the vote on the recommendations of, is it 5.4? 5.3. Is this agreed?
5.4.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Right, the substantive motion is carried. 5.4, Council Assembly dates and calendar of meetings 2020 to 2021. The recommendations are formally moved.
Agreed.
Now move to the vote.
Agreed. Agreed.
Right. The substantive motion is carried. 5.5, special urgency and urgent implementation decisions annual report.
Agreed.
I shall now move to the vote on the report and recommendations because you're all agreeing before time. Right. Those in favour? You can agree now.
Agreed.
Agreed. Right. Vote on the report is carried. I think we're on to, is there another one?
There's
Okay.
one more,
Yeah,
5.6.
thanks, Kitty. Right. 5.6, Treasury Management Performance 2019-20, Annual Report and Prudential Indicators. Yes, Martin, yes. Right. I shall now move to the vote on the report recommendations.
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Substantive motion is carried. Thank you. That was the last item of business tonight. You'll be all relieved to know. I would like to just say, all of you stay safe, and I hope to see you all in person soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Nice one. Bye, Mayor.
Good.